Chapter 36:17. Damn it! Why isn't there a single piece of good jade? Is it really like what that brat said? Is he the only one who can dig out good jade in this dead mining area? This is too strange. Meng Jueguang couldn't help but cry out. After 2 days without any results, even with Meng Jueguang's shrewdness, he finally began to lose his cool. Ninth cousin, is it possible that there is no good jade in this dead mining area at all? That brat Lin Yi was just lucky enough to dig out a few pieces, and all the good jade in this mining area has been dug out by him? Meng Tong was dejected, scratching his head and muttering, "Your words have enlightened me. If there is really good jade in this mining area, then it is impossible that he is the only one who can find it, and we can't." Meng Jueguang nodded thoughtfully and said, "We have been busy for 2 days without any results. Maybe there really is no good jade left here. This mining area is not the kind of high-quality mining area that we previously speculated. There are only a few pieces of good jade here, and that brat Lin Yi has picked them up. Then what should we do? Are we still going to dig tomorrow?" Meng Tong looked at Meng Jueguang eagerly. He had worked hard for 2 days in a row, but not even a single piece of good jade had entered his account. He was about to go crazy. Meng Jueguang was a senior steward, so he might not care about this small reward. But he, Meng Tong, was just a newcomer. Instead of wasting his time here, it was better to return to mine number 7 as soon as possible. Even if he could earn half a piece of spirit jade as a reward, it would still be a good thing. Meng Jueguang shook his head and said, "But what if this is really a high-quality mining area? We just happened to hit a relatively thick fault. Maybe we can dig out good jade tomorrow. If we give up so easily, wouldn't it be a big loss?" Worried about the gains and losses, Meng Jueguang had subconsciously fallen into a very typical gambler's mentality. He was definitely not willing to continue wasting his time here. But he was also not willing to give up just like that. He was afraid that he would lose the opportunity to obtain such good quality spiritual jades so close to him. But what if there is no good jade? Meng Tong cried with a bitter face. Of course, he also hoped to dig out good jade. But if he continued to waste time without any results, he was the one who would suffer a loss. When Meng Jueguang threw Lin Yi to the 10th mining area, didn't he want to waste time here? Now Lin Yi was swapped to the 7th mining area, while Meng Tong, the loyal little brother, was thrown to the dead mining area to suffer. If only we could find out if there is good jade here. Meng Tong could not help muttering. He really did not want to continue wasting time here. His words made Meng Jueguang have a flash of inspiration. He patted his head and said, "Yes. We can find the exploration experts of Lingyu Hall to take a look. Whether there is good jade in this dead mining area, we can find out by letting them explore again. It's really good to look." Meng Tong was stunned, and then looked at Meng Jueguang with a strange face and said, "Ninth cousin, why didn't you say so earlier? Didn't you work hard these 2 days in vain?" That was then and this is now. What do you know?" Meng Jueguang could not help but reprimand him with a red face. In fact, it was not that he did not think of this move. The main thing was that he thought that after discovering a good quality mine, he could make a fortune by himself. If he hired the exploration experts of Lingyu Hall, once they really found a good quality mine, even if he did not report it, he would at least have a share of the profits. This was obviously not in line with Meng Jueguang's interests. It was just that after working hard for 2 days, they could not even dig up a piece of good jade. When it was difficult to get down, it was not a bad idea to find the exploration experts. Even if they had to share some of the profits with the other party, it was better than the two of them continuing to work blindly like headless flies. After making up his mind, Meng Jueguang immediately left the mining area. These years, due to the network of connections he had built up, he knew one of the exploration experts of Lingyu Hall. But the other party was also a steward-level figure of Lingyu Hall. He was not someone that Meng Jueguang could order to come and go at his beck and call. He planned to first make friends with the other party overnight, so that he could ask the other party to come and help tomorrow. As for Meng Tong, he was sent away by Meng Jueguang to hand over the work with a sullen face. Digging up a pile of waste jade, but not even a piece of good jade. It was enough that Lin Yi bumped into such a shameful thing yesterday. If it happened again, where would he Meng Jueguang the steward put his old face? But what made Meng Tong happy was that, under his deliberate dawdling, and the fact that the 10th mining area was very far away, by the time he handed over the work, almost all the people in the mining area had left. Lin Yi would not be so bored as to specifically wait here to see him make a fool of himself. So he escaped the disaster. Early the next morning, Meng Jueguang could not wait to invite the exploration expert he found to the 10th dead mining area. Along the way, the exploration expert could not help but ask curiously, "Old Meng, I am puzzled. What is there to explore in a dead mining area like the 10th mining area, where even birds don't shit? Isn't it a waste of time to ask me to come?" Senior brother Ma, I originally thought so, but a few days ago, there was a newcomer in our Blue Cloud Pavilion who dug out 8 or 10 pieces of good jade in 2 consecutive days. So I felt that there might be something fishy here. Meng Jueguang explained. The exploration expert called Senior Brother Ma had a distracted look at first, but when he heard this, he was immediately stunned. He dug out so much good jade in 2 consecutive days. Could it be that he accidentally stumbled upon a high quality or spot? Senior Brother Ma is indeed an expert. You hit the nail on the head. I think so too. So I specially asked Senior Brother Ma to make a trip. Meng Jueguang nodded. As the two talked, they arrived at the 10th mining area. After listening to Meng Jueguang's words, Senior Brother Ma no longer perfunctorily and began to explore seriously. After all, for an exploration expert like him, if he could find good jade in the 10th mining area and report it to Spirit Jade Hall, it would be a real great contribution. Under Meng Jueguang's expectant face, Senior Brother Ma busied himself for a while and soon came up with a result. With a sullen face he said, "There is no such high-quality mining area, Old Meng. It is similar to the results of the previous regular exploration. The proportion of spiritual jade in the 10th mining area does not exceed 10%, and the concentration of spiritual qi is far from enough. In other words, even if there is 10% of spiritual jade, it is basically waste jade with thin spiritual qi. It is unlikely that there will be any good jade." Chapter 36:18. You don't believe me? Senior Brother Ma's face was not good, but due to his friendship with Meng Jueguang in the past, he still patiently explored the mining site alone, and then slightly surprised. "What? Did you find a good jade?" Meng Jueguang asked hurriedly, and Meng Tong, who was behind him, also looked expectant. The proportion of spiritual jades in this mining site is a little more than other places. It should be about 15%, and the concentration of spiritual qi is also a lot higher. Senior Brother Ma pondered for a moment, then shook his head and said, "But it is still far below the average level. Even if good jade can be found in this place, it is at most 30 or 40 pieces. There is not much value at all." "Only 30 or 40 pieces?" The face of Meng Jueguang, who was full of expectations, suddenly collapsed. This was completely different from the high-quality mining site he had expected. "Yes, this is still an optimistic estimate. In fact, if we want to dig out these 30 or 40 pieces of good jade, we don't know how much effort it will take. It will take at least 2 or 3 months." Senior Brother Ma said resolutely, "Damn, so I really shot myself in the foot, and have been busy for 2 days in vain?" Meng Jueguang whispered to himself, but he did not have the slightest doubt about Senior Brother Ma's judgment. After all, the other party was an exploration expert specially supported by Lingyu Hall, and he had the absolute right to speak in this regard. Since he had come to a conclusion, then it would certainly not be wrong. "I say, Old Meng, you are also the #1 figure in the Welcome Pavilion. It is better to be a little more steady. Next time, don't pull me over because of some newbie who got lucky once. It is simply a waste of time." Senior Brother Ma complained a few words of dissatisfaction, and Meng Jueguang had to nod again and again, respectfully sending off the exploration expert. After sending off Senior Brother Ma, in the #10 mining area, there were only Meng Jueguang, Meng Tong, and the 2 board guards in the distance. "Ninth cousin, what should we do now? There is no need to waste time here, right?" Meng Tong asked. According to Senior Brother Ma, Although there were still 30 to 40 pieces of good jade in the mine, it would take at least 2 to 3 months of hard work to dig them out. On average, it was less than 1 piece a day. It was completely incomparable to the 7th mine. Meng Jueguang nodded dejectedly. Indeed, there's no need to waste any more time. This mining area number 10 is really a trap. I must have been blinded by greed for a moment to be bewitched by this evil fellow Lin Yi. It's a waste of energy to come here. Instead, he's been able to comfortably mine in mine number 7 for 2 days. Although Meng Jueguang had specifically informed the people in mining area number 7 to pressure Lin Yi, it did not change the fact that Lin Yi was staying in mining area number 7. Even if it was the most worthless mine in mining area number 7, it was still far better than the desolate mining area number 10. Thinking that Lin Yi was now comfortably staying in mining area number 7, Meng Tong gnashed his teeth in hatred. Meng Tong gritted his teeth in anger. That was his territory, and now it was taken over by this bastard. Cousin Jiao, let's kick that bastard Lin Yi back. Let's just let him suffocate in mine number 10. Meng Tong gritted his teeth and said, Cousin Jiao, let's kick Lin Yi back. Indeed, we must quickly find a way to kick this fellow back. Otherwise it will be too easy for him. Meng Jueguang nodded reluctantly. Then he felt a little awkward. But how to make him agree to exchange? This is another problem. This fellow has tasted the sweetness in mining area number 7. He certainly doesn't want to come back to this desolate mining area number 10. Even if Meng Jueguang had a deep network in Spirit Jade Hall, the rules of Spirit Jade Hall were still there. If someone wanted to exchange a mining area, they must sign the contract in person. Just like when he asked Lin Yi to exchange to mining area number 7, he tried every possible way to entice Lin Yi to sign the contract on the spot. Now he wanted to exchange Lin Yi back. He had to find a way to make Lin Yi sign the contract. Otherwise, if Lin Yi did not agree, even if Meng Jueguang found Dai Wucheng to complete the formalities, it would be useless. After all, the other party was not the kind of previous newcomer who failed to build his foundation and had no human rights. Under the premise that there was no special reason, even if it was Meng Jueguang, the big senior brother in charge, there was no way to force Lin Yi on this matter. Meng Tong frowned and thought for a moment. 9th cousin, why don't we give him another 25 pieces of waste jade? You're an idiot. Meng Jueguang did not know whether to laugh or cry. Why did he have such an idiot cousin? He rolled his eyes and scolded. Do you think Lin Yi is as stupid as you? Is it not enough that he was tricked once before? Will he be tricked again now? Hearing Meng Jueguang's words, Meng Tong suddenly felt that he was a bit stupid. He could only say weakly, then what should we do? If Lin Yi doesn't agree, then won't he stay in mining area number 7 and not be able to drive him away? It's easy to invite the devil in but hard to send him away. Meng Jueguang scratched his head helplessly. 2 days ago, when he was trying to lure Lin Yi to mining area number 7, he was full of expectations that he would be able to find high-quality ores in mining area number 10 and make a fortune. In the end, he did not expect that not only would he not find any good jade, but he had also wasted 2 days. Now he did not know how to kick Lin Yi back. He had really lifted a rock and dropped it on his own feet. In fact, it was fine if he could not kick Lin Yi back to mining area number 10. As long as he let Meng Tong go back to mining area number 7, Meng Jueguang would not suffer any loss. It was nothing more than watching Lin Yi live comfortably in his heart. However, the problem now was that he had a very serious hidden worry. The most important reason why he was able to successfully exchange Lin Yi from mining area number 10 2 days ago was that Su Lingchong had nodded to young Master Su. Otherwise, no matter how good his relationship with Dai Wucheng was, Dai Wucheng would not dare to go against young Master Su's will. The reason why Su Lingchong had nodded back then was because he, Meng Jueguang, had solemnly promised Su Lingchong that he wouldn't let Su Lingchong off easily after finding out what was wrong with the 10th mine. As a result, not only did he not find out anything fishy about mining area number 10, but he was also stuck in mining area number 7 by Lin Yi. If this matter fell into young Master Su's ears, then Meng Jueguang would not be able to bear the consequences. Thinking of this, driving Lin Yi back to mining area number 10 was no longer a dispensable action to vent his anger, but a death mission that must be completed, because this was not only a personal grudge of Meng Jueguang, but also related to young Master Su's face. Chapter 36:19. He couldn't think of a way himself, and as for Meng Tong, that brainless idiot, he naturally couldn't count on him. The two of them walked out of mine number 10 with frowns on their faces. Meng Jueguang was just about to find Dai Wucheng to exchange a contract for mine number 7 for Meng Tong, when he unexpectedly saw two familiar figures at the door, Kong Mingming and Zhong Pingliang. These two weren't only disciples of Soaring Pavilion, but they were also Su Lingchong's direct subordinates. They could be considered to be in the limelight among all the newcomers, especially Kong Mingming, under young Master Su's special care. He had almost locked onto the position of the newcomer deacon. According to Meng Jueguang's observation, this person was quite scheming. Recently, he had been running to Jade Spirit Hall very frequently, presumably also thinking about the spirit jades in the mine. Meng Jueguang suddenly had a flash of inspiration. Right, these two were also Lin Yi's sworn enemies, and there was a deep hatred in the secular world. If he could ask them to help him deal with Lin Yi, they should be more than willing. Perhaps they knew Lin Yi better, and might have some good ideas. Thinking of this, Meng Jueguang hurriedly stepped forward and greeted. Junior Brother Kong, Junior Brother Zhong, I didn't expect to meet you two here. What a coincidence. Yo, if it isn't Senior Brother Meng. Kong Mingming and Zhong Pingliang looked at each other, and responded with a smile. Although the disciples of the Soaring Sky Pavilion naturally looked down on the people of the Clear Cloud Pavilion, Meng Jueguang was still the senior brother in charge of the Welcoming Pavilion, and his subordinate was also in charge of Lin Yi. Su Lingchong, the young master of the Su family, seemed to have some admiration for him, and so Kong Xiaoming wanted to make friends with him. As for Zhong Pingliang, he would follow whatever Kong Mingming did, determined not to fall behind. The few of them exchanged greetings, and Meng Jueguang immediately asked, Junior brothers, are you preparing to go to the mines? Not bad. Newbies like us aren't as free as you, Senior Brother Meng. Other than digging for spirit jades, there are no other good ways. Kong Mingming replied with a smile. Hey, Junior Brother Kong, your words are too modest. Not only are you two disciples of the Soaring Sky Pavilion, but you are also young Master Su's most valued subordinates. Even if you go down to the mines, it will definitely be the first mining area. Digging up 30 or 40 pieces of good jade a day is an easy thing to do. Even a senior brother like me is somewhat envious of you. If you still call yourself a little newbie, then it will be a bit unreasonable. Meng Jueguang's words were just a compliment, but Meng Tong, who was next to him, couldn't hide the envy in his eyes as he looked at the two of them. What did it mean to dig up 30 or 40 pieces of good jade a day? This meant that a day's worth of work was equivalent to 5 days of work for him. They could get a spirit jade for 3 to 4 days. It was really infuriating. Not at all. After noticing Meng Tong's envious gaze, Kong Ming looked humble, but he was actually quite proud of himself. It could be seen that it was the right decision to cling onto Su Lingchong's thigh when they first teleported to this island. Otherwise, if they were sent to a place like Blue Cloud Pavilion, working hard for a day and only getting 5 to 6 pieces of jade, that would be really miserable. Of course, if they were targeted like Lin Yi, it would be even more miserable. But if Kong Mingming knew that he, a key newbie in Mine 1, could only earn 1 piece of spirit jade after working hard for 3 to 4 days, and Lin Yi could steal at least 2 pieces of spirit jade any day, with almost no risk at all, would he be jealous to death? Of course, according to Kong Mingming's natural disposition of liking to take shortcuts. Although his current excellent environment was already enviable, he himself would not be satisfied with honestly digging for jade. Therefore, a few days ago, he dragged Su Lingchong around to build up his network, so that he could find an opportunity to fill his pockets after building up his network. This was in line with his nature. It was just that Spirit Jade Hall's supervision was strict. Even if he clung onto Su Lingchong, this thick thigh, it would not be easy for Kong Mingming to achieve this step. One must know that even Meng Jueguang, this senior with deep qualifications, did not dare to rashly lay hands on good jade with his current network. He could only wait for the opportunity to embezzle some scrap jade. Apart from being able to exchange these scrap jade for some meager remuneration, even if he managed to find a way to bring it out, it could at most be used to cheat others like how he cheated Lin Yi 2 days ago. Apart from that, there was not much use for it. Senior apprentice brother Meng, 2 days ago you told young Master Su that you wanted to investigate the fishy matter of Lin Yi digging up good jade in the 10th dead mining area. I wonder if there's any progress? Kong Mingming turned around and asked. Although digging up 8 or 10 pieces of good jade a day was already pretty miserable in his eyes, if he could make Lin Yi unable to dig up a single piece of good jade, wouldn't that be even more satisfying? Meng Jueguang was secretly delighted in his heart. He was just waiting for the other party to say this. Immediately, he let out a long sigh and said, "Sigh, don't mention it. Both junior apprentice brothers also know that I kicked this Lin Yi to the 10th dead mining area, which birds don't even shit on, in order to vent the anger of young Master Su and my 2 junior apprentice brothers. In the end, I didn't expect him to dig up good jade in 2 consecutive days. Isn't this going against our original intention of punishing him? Not to mention anything else, just based on the grudge between him and my 2 junior apprentice brothers. We can't let him go on like this." Although they knew that this guy was deliberately trying to make himself look good, Kong Mingming and Meng Jueguang still nodded. Then, they listened to Meng Jueguang continue. "So I set up a trap and tricked him to come to the 7th mining area, wanting to investigate the fishy matter in the 10th mining area. In the end, I invited the exploration experts of Lingyu Hall to take a look and found out that there's no good jade in the 10th mining area at all. There's nothing fishy about it either. He was purely lucky 2 days ago. If we let him stay there any longer, no matter how lucky he is, he definitely won't be able to dig up any good jade. Isn't that just right? Just kick him back to the 10th mining area, right? Don't you think so, junior apprentice brother Zhong?" Kong Mingming's eyes couldn't help but light up. He was holding back his strength to see Lin Yi suffer. If he could make Lin Yi unable to dig up any good jade for a few months, that would be perfect. Zhong Pingliang, who was standing at the side, nodded slightly but didn't say anything. He was Lin Yi's spy. At a time like this, he naturally couldn't speak carelessly. Otherwise, one word could help Lin Yi, but it could also make things worse. "Sigh. I originally had the same idea as my 2 junior apprentice brothers." Meng Jueguang smiled bitterly. "But the problem is, if we don't think of a way to make Lin Yi sign the contract himself, we can't do anything if he insists on staying in the 7th mining area and refuses to leave." Chapter 36:20. Meng Jueguang proudly replied, "That's because I found an excuse to give him 25 pieces of useless jade in exchange for the only small spiritual jade that still had spiritual qi in his possession." Useless jade? What does this guy need useless jade for? How could he trade a good jade full of energy for useless jade? It's not like you can eat it. Did a donkey kick him in the head? Kong Mingming couldn't help but wonder. Even Zhong Pingliang was a little stunned. The spiritual energy inside the Jade Wastelands was too thin. It was far from being comparable to the cultivation dwelling allocated to the new disciples in the welcoming pavilion. Even if it was a waste disciple from the Clear Cloud Pavilion, they wouldn't be interested in the spiritual energy inside the Jade Wastelands. Meng Jueguang smiled proudly. "Haha, don't be surprised, brothers. When I gave him the spiritual jade, he didn't know that it was useless jade. He thought that the 25 pieces were good jade. One small spiritual jade for 25 good jades. This big pie fell from the sky and knocked him out. I tricked him into signing the contract on the spot. Even if he found out that it was useless jade, he couldn't go back on his word." "I see. So Lin Yi was tricked by Senior Meng." Kong Xiaoming understood the situation and chuckled. He was happy to see Lin Yi being humiliated like this. But Zhong Pingliang didn't think so. Among everyone present, he was the first to know Lin Yi and understood him the best. As far as he was concerned, Boss Lin Yi's miraculous abilities had been proven time and time again in the common world. He wasn't the kind of guy who would be tricked easily. It was already good enough that he didn't trick others. But how could others trick him? He, Zhong Pingliang, was suffering from the pain of shooting himself in the foot. Even his kidneys were gone. As a result, being tricked into exchanging good jade for useless jade wasn't something that would happen to Lin Yi, unless he wanted the jade and was willing to be tricked. He didn't know what Lin Yi wanted the jade for, but he had a feeling that it would be of great use to his boss Lin Yi. Meng Jueguang and the others thought that they tricked boss Lin Yi, but they might have fallen into Lin Yi's trap. They laughed happily for a while. Kong Ming continued. Then how do we kick Lin Yi back to mine number 10? Do you have any ideas, Senior Meng? We can't just let him roam around mine number 7 forever, can we? I'm also having a headache over this problem. Meng Tong just said that he would use another 25 pieces of jade to trick Lin Yi back. I told you that Lin Yi isn't an idiot, he wouldn't fall for it again. You two are smart people, what do you think? Meng Jueguang looked at Kong Ming and Zhong Pingliang. Indeed, it's only been 2 days, and he wants to trick Lin Yi again. Does he think Lin Yi is an idiot? Or does he think he's an idiot? Kong Ming sneered as he glanced at Meng Tong. The disdain in his eyes was self-evident. On the other hand, Meng Tong's face flushed red from his words. Zhong Pingliang suddenly interrupted. I actually think that Meng Tong's suggestion might work. Oh, why do you say that, Junior Zhong? Meng Jueguang and Kong Ming asked at the same time. Meng Tong, on the other hand, looked at Zhong Pingliang gratefully, thanking him for helping him out. Wow, this Senior Zhong is so nice. I need to get closer to him in the future and discuss things with him. Zhong Pingliang was different from Meng Tong. Like Kong Ming, he was recruited by Su Lingchong personally. He wasn't an idiot either. If the same words came out of Meng Tong's mouth, people would only laugh at him. But if it came out of Zhong Pingliang's mouth, Meng Jueguang and Kong Ming would have to think about it carefully. What the two senior brothers said is true. With Lin Yi's shrewdness, he wouldn't fall for the same trick 2 days later. Zhong Pingliang analyzed. But that's on the premise that he'd already realized that he'd been tricked. What if he still hasn't realized that the 25 pieces of jade senior brother Meng gave him were useless? Is that possible? Meng Jueguang and Kong Ming looked at each other. Zhong Pingliang's words made sense. If Lin Yi still hadn't realized that the spirit jade was useless, then he could do it again. There was a chance of success. Pingliang saw that the two were still hesitating, so he continued. According to what Meng's senior brother said, it's only been 2 days since Lin Yi took the 25 jade pieces, and he's been mining in the mines for the past 2 days, so he hasn't had much time to use the spirit jades. If he doesn't use them, then he wouldn't have realized that they're all useless jades. From what I see, it's very likely that he didn't notice them. But even if he's mining in the day, he'll still need the spirit jade when he goes back to train at night, right? Meng Jueguang thought that Zhong Pingliang's words made sense, but he was still confused. Zhong Pingliang shook his head. I don't dare to boast about others, but I dare say that I don't know Lin Yi as well as the other senior brothers. This guy looks normal on the outside, but he's actually very arrogant. He thinks that he's a genius that only appears once in 10,000 years. So he's used to playing tricks when he's in the common world. He's never trained as hard as we do, so I'm willing to bet that he hasn't been training seriously these 2 days. So he doesn't need the spirit jade. Kong Xiaoming nodded from the side. I agree with what Junior Zhong said. Senior brother Meng, you might not know this, but Lin Yi is actually an alchemist in the common world. His current strength is basically increased by elixirs. People like him who are used to elixirs wouldn't bother with daily training. I think it's very likely that he's trying to save up spirit jades to buy elixirs. As for training, someone like him who's addicted to pills probably doesn't even know how to use spirit jade to train, right? Ha ha ha. The others burst into laughter. Seeing Meng Jueguang's convinced expression, Zhong Pingliang was secretly happy. He was sure that boss Lin Yi needed the useless jade, so he purposely led these people to give Lin Yi jade again. If it was only him, Meng Jueguang would still be a little skeptical, but he didn't think that even Kong Ming would help him. Now, Meng Jueguang had no choice but to believe it. Chapter 36-21. You're right. Meng Jueguang recalled. It was indeed like this. He couldn't help but nod. Meng Xixiang and Meng Tong Xixiang should have seen Lin Yi these past 2 days, right? Did he get angry after he realized he was tricked? Pinliang continued to strike while the iron was hot. He was willing to bet that even if boss Lin Yi realized that the 25 pieces were all useless jade, he wouldn't show it on his face. Meng Jueguang paused and recalled carefully with Meng Tong. They both said excitedly, "Yeah, I didn't see him yesterday, but I did see him the day before yesterday. It was just like what Brother Zhong said. The kid behaved normally, as if he didn't realize those were all useless jade." That's it. So we can follow Meng Tong Xixiang's suggestion and prepare a pile of useless jade and send it to him. Pinliang laughed. Meng Jueguang was about to nod, but then he hesitated and said, "But what if he has already found out that it is a waste jade? After all, what we said was just speculation. That kid has always been good at acting. Maybe he's just swallowing his pride and acting normally these past 2 days? If that's the case, wouldn't it be a waste to give him the useless jade?" This guy wasn't easy to fool. Pinliang curled his lips and thought about it. That's easy. Let Meng Tong Xixiang find a chance to get information from him. Won't he know after a little testing? But then again, it's just a pile of useless jade. Even if it doesn't work, you won't lose much, Meng Xixiang. You're right, Brother Zhong. Meng Jueguang nodded. The other party was giving him advice. If he still didn't nod, it would be a little embarrassing. It made it seem like he couldn't afford the useless jade in front of Kong Ming and Pinliang. He didn't want to lose face. And to be honest, Pinliang's suggestion sounded very reliable. It was worth a try. After the discussion, Meng Jueguang arranged for Meng Tong to find Lin Yi. Meng Tong was going back to mine number 7 anyway. It was on the way. When he arrived at mine number 7, Meng Tong saw Li Jingming working in the middle of the mine. He couldn't help but feel angry. Meng Jueguang had purposely left this mining spot for him. Now that he had wasted 2 days of effort in dead mine number 10, Li Jingming, this scheming brat, had taken advantage of him. Of course he was unhappy. Although, Meng Jueguang hinted to Li Jingming to put pressure on Lin Yi, but Meng Tong automatically ignored it. Besides, when he framed Lin Yi last time, Li Jingming slandered him for hiding spirit jade and even searched him. He was rebelling. Although he couldn't do anything because of Meng Jueguang, he still remembered it. Meng Tong was a very arrogant and selfish person. So as far as he was concerned, Li Jingming had ill intentions, and he had the intention to replace him. He felt that although Li Jingming followed Meng Jueguang, the best resources would still be given to Meng Tong first. The rest of the resources would go to him. If he could find a chance to replace Meng Tong, the benefits would be obvious. Humph. Just you wait, I'll deal with you. Meng Tong spat angrily. He then looked around for Lin Yi. After all, his current task was to find Lin Yi and get some words out of him. He was still clear about his priorities. When he found Lin Yi, Meng Tong's bad mood was immediately swept away. He couldn't help but gloat. Lin Yi's mine was located in the most remote corner. It was the kind that no one had ever paid attention to before. There were a few empty mines on the side. According to past experience, the jade production rate was better than Lin Yi's mine. However, Lin Yi didn't have any intention of moving out. In fact, if he wanted to move out, someone would immediately rush over to snatch his mine until he gave up. This was Meng Jueguang's order. Lin Yi could only stay in the worst mine in the entire mining area number 7 to mine. However, Lin Yi didn't care about this at all. He didn't need others to go through much trouble. He just settled down in the most remote and worst mine. He had the attitude of Lu Bianren, who was happy to live a poor life. In fact, even if others wanted him to come out, he himself didn't want to come out. In this most remote mine, he could completely avoid the sight of the guards. How great was that? Pretentious newbie, are you busy? Meng Tong gloated for a while, and then walked towards Lin Yi. If it was someone else who came to the mining area and didn't work hard, they would definitely be severely punished by the guards. However, Meng Tong was specially taken care of by Meng Jueguang. Therefore, the guards turned a blind eye to this. If you have something to say it quickly. Don't disturb me. Lin Yi was about to put a piece of waste jade into the space of the jade pendant. Seeing Meng Tong walking over, he had to stop halfway. He He was obviously driven to the worst mine, but he still had a temper. However, it was normal for him to have a temper. Who didn't have a temper here? Meng Tong couldn't help but curl his lips. He organized his words and said, "Nothing much. I just wanted to ask you. Cousin Jiao gave you so many spiritual jades 2 days ago. Did you use them? Are you testing me to see if I found any waste jade or not?" Lin Yi's heart skipped a beat. He pretended to be cautious and said, "No, they are still there. Why? Do you want to go back on your word? Do you want to take them back from me? Let me tell you, I won't go back to mining area number 10. Don't expect me to return these spiritual jades to you." "Hey, why are you so excited? We don't want to take them back. We are just casually asking." Meng Tong made up his mind. After coming to a conclusion, he immediately ignored Lin Yi and turned to leave. Looking at this guy's rash back, Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh. Meng Jueguang actually sent this guy with a screw loose to find excuses from him. He really didn't know whether to say that Meng Jueguang was careless, or that he had a hole in his brain. This was all thanks to his cooperation. Otherwise, if it was someone else, just based on Meng Tong's rash words, even if they didn't have any suspicions before, they would have become suspicious now. However, why did Meng Jueguang send this guy to test me? Lin Yi fell into deep thought. After a while, he shook his head with a playful expression. Could it be that these two people found out that they couldn't dig up any good jade in mining area number 10? So they are thinking of some way to kick me back. Lin Yi's guess was soon confirmed. When he returned to his cave residence after work, he saw Meng Jueguang and Meng Tong waiting for him. Chapter 36-22. Junior brother Lin Yi, I plan to transfer you back to the number 10 mining area. Please sign this mining area contract. Meng Jueguang went straight to the point. Why should I? Lin Yi glanced at him. A smile that wasn't quite a smile on his face. I'm having a good time in the 7th mining area, and I can get good jade with no effort at all. Why would I go back to a dead mining area like that? Do I look sick to you, senior brother Meng? Or are you sick to your stomach? I knew you wouldn't want to, but it's okay. I will make you agree. Meng Jueguang signaled Meng Tong to put the bag of spiritual jades on the stone table and said, In 3 months, you can only earn 6 or 7 pieces of spiritual jades at most in the number 7 mining area. But if you agree to change mining areas, I can give you 10 pieces right now. What do you think? 10 pieces of spiritual jades? It's just to get me back to the number 10 mining area. Do you think it's worth it to pay such a high price, senior brother Meng? Lin Yi suddenly laughed, then pretended to be suspicious and said, There's no such thing as a free lunch. Senior brother Meng, are you guys digging a hole for me to jump into? Puffed. Junior brother Lin Yi, you can't overestimate yourself. Do you think it's worth it to pay such a high price to dig a hole for you? Meng Jueguang sneered disdainfully and explained after a pause. To tell you the truth, young Master Su found out that I transferred you to the number 7 mining area. Young Master Su is very angry, so I can only think of a way to exchange you back. I have no other choice but to pay such a price. Now you have no more doubts, right? Haha, he obviously wants to use a few pieces of useless jade to trick me back to the dead mining area. This guy really knows how to make a good lie. However, although he clearly saw through the other party's little trick, Lin Yi was very willing to cooperate. Since the other party was in a hurry to give him spiritual jades, how could he refuse? Super good people like Meng Jueguang and Meng Tong were very rare in this world. Lin Yi was really happy to meet them as soon as he arrived at Heaven Island. Alright then, since Senior Meng has put it this way, it would be inappropriate for me to refuse. However, Senior Meng, don't you think that 10 pieces of spirit jades is a little too little? Lin Yi pretended to be in a difficult position and kept Meng Jueguang in suspense. 10 yuan is already a lot. Meng Jueguang said, pretending to be in deep thought. Fuck, you're raising the price again. When Meng Tong saw that Lin Yi had taken the bait, he was actually secretly pleased. As for wasting a few more pieces of waste jade, it was not a problem at all in his eyes. However, on the surface, he deliberately cooperated with Meng Jueguang. He pretended to be very dissatisfied and said, 10 pieces of spirit jades is already a lot. Far more than your mining reward, okay? Don't push your luck. I can't go any higher. This is already a sky-high price. These two guys are quite into it. Lenny laughed in his heart, but on the surface, he put on a straight face and pretended to be angry and said, Senior Meng, you have to speak with a conscience. You just asked me to change mine 2 days ago, and today you want me to change mine back. From the beginning to the end, it was you who tormented me, your junior. And I didn't even have a word of complaint. Since Senior Meng feels that you are at a disadvantage. Alright then, I won't change mine anymore, okay? Seeing that Lenny wanted to leave, Meng Jueguang hurriedly stopped him and said, Junior Meng Lenny, don't be in such a hurry. I didn't say that it can't go higher than 10 pieces of spirit jades, right? That's what Meng Tong said. That's it. I'll give you 2 more pieces, 12 pieces of spirit jades. 12 pieces? Lenny looked at Meng Jueguang, raised his eyebrows and said, Senior Meng, 2 days ago you asked me to change mine number 10 to mine number 7, and even gave me 25 pieces of spirit jades. Now you're kicking me from mine number 7 back to mine number 10. Don't you think this price is a little too shabby? How can that be the same? The 25 pieces of spirit jades from before were to exchange for your little spirit jade, not to let you change mine. Meng Jueguang paused for a moment, and seemed to have made a big decision. But considering that Junior Meng Lin Yi is a newcomer, it's really not easy for you to be assigned to mine number 10. How about this? I'll take a step back and give you 15 pieces of spirit jades. 30 pieces. If you're short even 1 piece, don't come looking for me again. Lenny said resolutely. If this was a normal transaction, the other party would have fallen out with him long ago. However, he knew what Meng Jueguang was thinking. In order to get him to take the bait, Meng Jueguang would definitely not be stingy with these 10 pieces of useless spirit jades. At this time, if he didn't seize the opportunity to extort more spirit jades, it would be the end of the world. As expected, after Meng Jueguang's expression turned ugly for a while, he finally gritted his teeth and agreed. All right, in order to appease young Master Su's anger, I'll accept this loss. 25 pieces, that's the limit I can bear. Sign the contract for the mine. All right. Lenny smiled and nodded. Without any delay, he signed the contract, counted the number of spirit jades, and turned to leave. In fact, although Lenny knew that it was useless spirit jades, he knew when to stop. One had to know that he was taking good spirit jades. If he insisted on a high amount, it would seem that the spirit jades were not valuable. After waiting for Lenny to leave, Meng Jueguang, who was deliberately suppressing his anger, changed his expression and sneered. This kid is really good at bargaining. I reckon that he used to go to the market to buy vegetables in the secular world. His ability to haggle is top-notch. It's a pity that he's smart, but he doesn't have any great wisdom. To be able to fall into the same trap twice in a row. With this kind of IQ, he can still come to our Heaven Stage Island. He's really a rare genius. Hehe, who asked him to meet our 9th cousin. In my opinion, it wouldn't be strange for him to fall into this trap a few more times. This kid can't do anything. He only has a bit of luck. Previously, he was actually able to dig out good spirit jades in the 10th dead mine. What the hell? But this time, after exchanging, I want to see if he can still dig out good spirit jades. Meng Tong said with a face full of expectation. That goes without saying. Just wait for a good show tomorrow. Meng Jueguang said with a face full of ridicule. Previously, the exploration experts had already sentenced the 10th mine to death. He was sure that even if Lin Yi's luck was heaven-defying, he wouldn't be able to dig out any good spirit jades when he returned to the 10th mine. Therefore, he couldn't wait to see Lin Yi's depressed and unlucky look. The next day, as soon as the handover bell rang, Meng Jueguang and Meng Tong excitedly gathered the newcomers of the Blue Cloud Pavilion and sat around the handover site to watch the show. The newcomers looked at each other. They didn't know much about what happened in the past few days, but with the intentional spread of information by Meng Tong and Li Jingming, they more or less knew the gist of it. Chapter 36-23. However, what the 3rd pavilion master could not do was easily accomplished by Meng Jueguang, the eldest senior brother in charge. With just a few words, He easily transferred Lin Yi to the coveted 7th mine. However, Lin Yi was really a good-for-nothing, relying on the 3rd Pavilion Master's support. Not only did he not repay senior brother Meng's kindness, but he also badmouthed senior brother Meng after arriving at the 7th mine. In less than 2 days, he had angered everyone. Meng Shiro, in a fit of rage, he'd kicked Lin Yi back to the 10th mine. And the reason he'd called everyone here was to witness Lin Yi's first day back in the mines. They'd like to see if this arrogant idiot could still be as lucky as he was before. The newcomers could reach the heaven stage and above, so they were naturally all smart people. Regardless of the credibility of the rumor, they at least knew that Lin Yi's exchange of mines in the past 2 days was true, and that it was indeed Meng Jueguang who was behind the scenes. This was enough for them to draw a very important conclusion. Meng Jueguang, the eldest senior brother in charge, had the ability to summon clouds and rain with a flip of his hand. Those who obeyed him would prosper, while those who defied him might not die, but they would definitely end up in a miserable state. Therefore, even if there were newcomers who were worried about being slapped in the face by Lin Yi, they still followed Meng Jueguang closely. Since senior brother Meng had asked them to watch Lin Yi, they would obediently watch. Anyway, they would not be the unlucky ones. After a while, under everyone's expectations, Lin Yi's figure finally appeared on the long 10th mine. Lin Yi was not surprised by the crowd's presence. He calmly weighed the jade as usual. Lin Yi, 16 pieces of waste jade, 20 pieces of junk jade. When the quality inspection results were announced, Meng Jueguang and the others could not help but grin mockingly. The crowd was in an uproar. Even the other newcomers looked at Lin Yi with schadenfreude. Infuriate people laugh at people without. This was the innate bad nature of these people. Lin Yi looked at the crowd calmly. He didn't steal any hidden spiritual jade today, so he didn't charge the waste jade he dug up. After all, Meng Jueguang and Meng Tong had been busy in the number 10 mining area for 2 days, but they didn't find anything. Lin Yi, on the other hand, was able to dig up good jade as soon as he went back. This was a little strange. Therefore, in order to avoid suspicion, he decided to pretend for 2 days first. Moreover, he had other motives for doing so. Pretentious newbie, aren't you the legendary son of luck? Why isn't he lucky this time? Meng Tong hurriedly jumped out to mock him. He had been waiting for this day for a long time. He pretended to be surprised and said, "Oh, I understand. Don't tell me you didn't step on dog poop when you went out today. That's why you're so unlucky. How pitiful. Wahahaha." When the group of rookies heard this, they could not help but laugh even more wantonly. Meng Tong didn't seem like a smart person usually, but when his mouth started mocking people, he was quite good at it. In the end, Lin Yi did not fly into a rage out of humiliation like everyone imagined. Instead, he looked calmly at Meng Tong and said thoughtfully, "What you said reminds me. On the first day, I kicked you in the face, so my luck has been pretty good ever since. Could this be the dog poop luck you mentioned?" "Ha!" Meng Tong was immediately stunned as he said in confusion, "What the hell are you saying? What has kicking my face got to do with dog poop luck?" At this moment, some of the rookies reacted. Wasn't this equivalent to saying that Meng Tong's face was dog poop? However, they did not dare to laugh even though they wanted to. They were hindered by Meng Jueguang's tyranny. They could only forcefully hold back their laughter, as their entire bodies twitched on the spot. Meng Jueguang stared at the crowd with a livid expression before cursing with a black face. "He is indirectly calling you dog poop. You can't even tell from this. What a fool." "Haha, senior brother Meng is wise. You hit the nail on the head. Brother Meng Tong, why don't you find a chance to let me kick you again? I still want to have a few more rounds of dog poop luck." Lin Yi looked sincerely at Meng Tong. "Holy shit. You are the fucking dog poop. You bastard, I'll fight it out with you." Meng Tong finally understood. Looking at those rookies who were covering their mouths and holding back their laughter, his face flushed red instantly. He rushed over in exasperation and was about to attack. Lin Yi looked at him quietly as he silently calculated in his heart. When the other party attacked him, he would immediately retaliate. This time, he would not let the other party have it as easy as last time. Even if he could not kill him directly, he would at least make him bedridden for a month. so that he would not continue to come to him and cause trouble in the future. But at the same time, Linny also noticed that many guards around had already noticed the situation over here. Each of their eyes instantly revealed a frightening murderous aura, as if they would pounce over at the next moment. Private fights were strictly prohibited in Spirit Jade Hall. Those who violated it would die. This was the #1 dead rule in Spirit Jade Hall. These guards were at least experts in the early stage of Foundation establishment. Any one of them could instantly behead Meng Tong. And looking at their posture, if Meng Tong pounced over again, these guards would really kill him. Meng Jueguang's heart suddenly thumped when he saw this. Although his connections in Spirit Jade Hall were not bad, it was limited to the stewards in charge of various affairs. As for these guards, he did not have any relationship with them. It was not that he did not want to make friends with them, but he did not dare to, because according to the rules of Spirit Jade Hall, all guards were strictly prohibited from contact with other people. Even these stewards in Spirit Jade Hall were not allowed. Once found out, it would be regarded as corruption and dereliction of duty. This was a serious crime that could cripple one's cultivation. So if these guards really made a move, he was afraid that he would not even have the chance to exonerate Meng Tong. Seeing this, he could only rush to stop Meng Tong before he started a private fight. Disgraceful thing, still not going to scram to the side for me, Meng Jueguang angrily reprimanded. It was obviously a great opportunity to see Lin Yi make a fool of himself. But in the end, it was tormented by this brainless fool, and instead scared himself into a cold sweat. He really could not accomplish anything, but was good at spoiling things. Looking at the speed of Meng Jueguang's movement just now, Lin Yi's eyelids could not help but twitch. It seemed that this steward senior brother's strength was indeed not weak. At least his cultivation was at the peak of the early stage of Foundation establishment. Compared to the bitter senior brother, he was a notch stronger. Chapter 36-24. Senior Brother Meng, when you asked me to agree to change the mine yesterday, your tone was not like this. You changed your face too quickly, didn't you? Linny pretended to be depressed and said, But I really have something to ask of you, Senior Brother Meng. This kid really wanted to ask of him? Meng Jueguang's heart was delighted, and he suddenly felt a sense of satisfaction. If it was any other newcomer who came to ask him, he might not feel any satisfaction. After all, this was a matter of course. But this person was Lin Yi, who had always been rebellious and refused to submit to him. This feeling was very different. The most satisfying thing in the world was to admire the face of the enemy when he was begging for mercy. Tell me, what do you want from me? Meng Jueguang's anger was suddenly swept away, and he deliberately put on airs. I want to take a day off tomorrow. I hope Senior Brother Meng can approve it. Linny said. He and the other newcomers, although they had now signed the Spirit Jade Hall contract to mine here. And the stipulation was that they could not be absent for 3 months without reason. But before they became the miners of Spirit Jade Hall, their primary role was to welcome the newcomers of the new pavilion. Therefore, just like when the mining area was allocated, Meng Jueguang as the big senior brother could intervene in the management of the newcomers. As long as Meng Jueguang nodded his head, asking for a day or 2 off was a matter of a word. So this guy wanted to ask for leave. Meng Jueguang was enlightened, and immediately curled his lips and said, What's the reason? Why should I approve your request for leave? Senior Brother Meng, as you can see, I worked hard all day but couldn't dig out any good jade. My chest is a little tight, so I think I need to rest. Linny deliberately pretended to be very depressed. Huh? Chest tightness? Looking at your expression, I thought you didn't take it to heart. It turns out that you also have times when your chest feels tight. Meng Jueguang was instantly happy. Even Meng Tong, who was angry out of humiliation, was beaming with joy. From the first day they met Lin Yi, no matter how they tried to deal with him, Lin Yi always maintained a calm expression. Every time they saw this expression on his face, Meng Jueguang and Meng Tong's mood was as bad as eating shit, especially when their plan failed and they were tricked. But now Lin Yi actually took the initiative to admit that he was depressed. This was simply an unprecedented victory. It was good to be depressed. I'll make you depressed until you die. Meng Jueguang was suddenly in a good mood. He laughed and patted Lin Yi's shoulder, saying, "Originally, I couldn't approve this leave for you. After all, it will damage the image of our Blue Cloud Pavilion if people hear that you flinch when you encounter a little setback. But since you're so depressed, I'll be magnanimous and grant you a day off. If you really can't, it's okay to take a few more days. Anyway, you won't be able to dig a fart even if you come. Don't dig for a few days and die of depression. Then you'll be the first newcomer to die of depression in the history of the Heaven Stage North Island. Thank you, Senior Brother Meng." Lin Yi didn't care about the sarcasm in these words at all. He didn't look at the crowd anymore and turned to leave. Hee, ninth cousin, look at how ugly this kid's smile is. It's like crying. Wahahaha. Meng Tong mocked unscrupulously behind him. Lin Yi's expression was actually no different from before. But at this moment, in the eyes of Meng Tong, it was as ugly as it could be. Previously, when he looked at this expression, he always felt that the other party was showing off. He even wanted to rush over and kick his face. But now, the more he looked at it, the more pleasing it was to his eyes. It made him feel happy. Meng Jueguang also smiled sarcastically. This is called profound skill, understand? No matter how depressed you are, you must pretend to be calm and smile. Otherwise, how can you live up to the title of pretentious newcomer? The newcomers on the side suddenly burst into laughter. Lin Yi was an extremely strong troublemaker from the first day. He was recognized to be above the group of ordinary newcomers. To be able to enjoy such a scene of him being defeated, this mood had to be described with one word. Cool. Who asked you to show off? You deserve to be struck by lightning. Not to mention how happy this group of people were. Lin Yi didn't care about them at all. As for the so-called depressed mood, it was purely for them to see. The nature of it was no different from playing a monkey. One must know that Meng Jueguang, this super good person, had given him a total of 50 spiritual jades twice. How could he be depressed? The reason why he applied for leave from Meng Jueguang this time was naturally not because he wanted to slack off for a day, but because he wanted to make use of this opportunity to make a trip to the city square. After all, he had more than enough spiritual jades on hand, and he wanted to buy the 5 medicinal herbs required to refine the Heavenly Path Golden Pill first. If he delayed too long, the 5 medicinal herbs would be sold out, and that would be an awkward situation. Although the supply of the 5 medicinal herbs seemed to be quite large, it was better to be safe than sorry. The next morning, Lin Yi put on the 1,000-thread mask and went straight to the market. Due to Meng Jueguang's contribution, coupled with the spiritual jades that he had stolen from the mines these days, Lin Yi had already accumulated about 60 spiritual jades. Although this kind of wealth couldn't be said to be extravagant, it was definitely considered a big tycoon among the newcomers. And in a place like the market, when one's wallet was full, one would naturally have more confidence. After spending 8 spiritual jades to buy the 5 medicinal herbs that he had his eyes on, Lin Yi didn't immediately turn back. Instead, he planned to casually walk around the market. Since he was already resting today, there was plenty of time, so Lin Yi was in no hurry to return. Although he had walked around twice the last time he came, he didn't have many spiritual jades on hand. Many things were only seen from afar, and he didn't ask too much. But this time was different. He had more than 50 spiritual jades on hand, which was enough to buy a lot of things. Walking around the outer street and the middle street, although he saw a lot of interesting things, there were only a few that really caught Lin Yi's eye. In this kind of cultivator market, no matter what it was, it could generally be classified into the following 2 categories: either to assist in cultivation or to assist in combat. For Lin Yi, he had the space of the jade pendant, and he could refine his own pills. Therefore, these cultivation aids in the market basically didn't catch his eye. Looking at the entire outer street and the middle street, even the most valuable and effective cultivation aids were far less effective than Lin Yi's own space of the jade pendant, so there was naturally no need to buy them. Chapter 36-25. Of course, after strolling through the entire outer street and middle street, there were still a few items that could catch Lin Yi's eye. However, the prices of these items were not low. They often cost dozens, or even hundreds of spirit jades. For Lin, although these things were a little useful, they were not particularly critical and important. They belonged to the category of buying or not buying. If Lin had a huge sum of thousands of spirit jades, he might buy them. But now he would take a look first. After strolling through the outer street and middle street, Lin originally planned to go back, but the situation in front of him made him stop unconsciously. That was the entrance to the inner street. Usually, idlers were not allowed to enter. Only the top-ranked inner disciples of the three pavilions were qualified to enter. The last time he came, it was deserted and looked extremely mysterious. But today the flow of people was bustling inside. What surprised Lin was that many of them were only masters in the early stage of foundation establishment, and the guards responsible for maintaining order did not stop them like last time. What is this situation? Lin was stunned for a moment before he finally found a special sign that was different from the past at the entrance to the inner street. Inner street open day. There was also a line of small words below. Masters above the early stage of foundation establishment can enter. After all, when he was in the secular world, he had been exposed to various commercial means. After Lin stopped and thought for a moment, he quickly figured out the reason. The inner street was the most mysterious and highest street in the market square. The reason why there was a threshold for entry was that the inner street was the most mysterious street in the market square. The main purpose was to highlight their noble status and attract the most elite inner sect disciples of the three great pavilions. After all, this group of people had large amounts of spiritual jades on hand and belonged to the main group of high-end consumers. After the entry threshold was set in the inner street, others could not enter, but only they could. This in itself was a symbol of noble status. When this group of people's sense of superiority was satisfied, they were naturally more willing to come to the inner street to spend. In fact, the items that could be stored in the inner street had to be of a much higher quality than those in the outer street and middle street. Naturally, the price would be much more expensive. Those who had not reached the corresponding level would not be able to afford it. Thus, rather than wasting time with these low-level cultivators in the outer and middle streets, it would be better to gather them in the inner streets and create a threshold effect, specifically serving the most elite inner sect disciples of the three great pavilions. Therefore, from a purely commercial point of view, the inner street was equivalent to a super VIP in the market. Its existence was very reasonable and effective. However, any business method would have its drawbacks, and the existence of the inner streets was no exception. While the threshold effect attracted the elite disciples of the three great pavilions, the drawbacks of the inner streets were also extremely obvious. That was, its source of customers was naturally very small. There were only so many elite disciples of the three great pavilions, which meant that the market of the inner streets was naturally limited. This was obviously not a good thing for a commercial organization that strived to develop. After all, although 99% of the low-level cultivators in the outer and middle streets could not afford the items in the inner streets, there were always some exceptional potential customers. However, there were always some exceptional potential customers, such as those second-generation cultivators, who were not very strong, but had a large number of spiritual jades, like the elite disciples of the three great pavilions. Therefore, the inner streets were open to the public. The most mysterious inner street of the market square was chosen one day a month to be open to ordinary cultivators who did not meet the threshold. This way, it could attract more potential customers, and at the same time, it would not arouse the resentment of the elite disciples of the three great pavilions. In fact, the opening day of the inner streets every month would let more low-level cultivators truly understand the privileges they had and become even more envious of them. Therefore, the existence of the inner streets would not make the elite disciples of the three great pavilions feel that they were degraded. Instead, it would satisfy their sense of superiority, killing two birds with one stone. Sure enough, there was no time like the present. With such a rare opportunity to see the true face of the inner streets, Lin naturally would not let it go for nothing. Anyway, he had nothing to do. Maybe he could encounter some treasures he liked in the inner streets. Or he could directly buy the last heart-devouring exquisite grass needed to refine the heavenly golden pill in the inner streets. This was not impossible. Releasing the aura of an early-stage foundation establishment expert, the inner street guards only glanced at Lin Yi and happily let him pass. Following the flow of people into the inner streets, Lin Yi only took a look around and found that the inner streets were indeed very different from the outer streets and the middle streets. This could be clearly distinguished from the layout of the street and the structure of the shops. Simply put, the shops on the outer streets did not have a fixed layout at all. In fact, they were purely stalls. Although the middle streets were better, the nature was basically not much different from the farmers' markets in the secular world. However, the inner streets were very particular. At a glance, there were nearly 20 shops, each with its own independent pavilion. The layout was elegant and grand. At a glance, one could tell that it was a high-end place. According to the usual situation of the inner streets, the flow of customers was actually not large. If a shop could have 3 or 4 people enter at the same time, it would be considered a prosperous business. However, today's inner streets were obviously not in this category. Not to mention 3 or 4. Based on this situation, perhaps even 30 or 40 people would not be able to stop them. Fortunately, these shops were big enough. Even with so many people pouring in, it didn't seem too crowded. Moreover, there were trained disciples in charge of receiving them. Thus, although the scene looked lively, it was still orderly and didn't cause any trouble. With great interest, Lin Yi followed the flow of people and looked carefully at each shop. As he expected, the prices of the items in the inner streets were far higher than those in the outer and middle streets. In the outside world, an item worth a few dozen spirit jades was already considered a high price. As for an item worth more than 100 spirit jades, it was even rarer. However, in this inner street, any random item would start from a few dozen spirit jades. Lin Yi followed the flow of people and looked at several shops. He almost did not see an item priced at less than 50 spirit jades. Instead, items priced at hundreds or even hundreds of spirit jades could be found everywhere. Sure enough, only after entering the inner street did one realize how poor one was. Originally, Lin Yi thought that although the amount of spirit jades he had on hand was not much, it was absolutely not a small amount. But now that he looked around, his mood suddenly became the same as the time when he carried a small piece of spirit jades to stroll around the outer and middle streets. He was embarrassed. Lin Yi had originally planned to buy something, but now he had no choice but to dispel this idea. This trip would be better for him to take a look and just treat it as an eye-opener. After all, even if he spent all the spirit jades he had on hand, he would not be able to buy anything decent. Chapter 36:26. The bigger the store, the better the items. Lin Yi had no reason to miss such a rare store, so he followed the flow of people and walked in. After entering the shop, Lin Yi quickly noticed the difference between this Hong Merchant Association and the other shops in the inner street. The decorations were more majestic, but that wasn't the main point. The main point was that the people who came here were wearing the symbol of the elite disciples of the 3 pavilions. The number of people who came here was far more than the other shops. In other words, even if today was not the opening day of the inner street, the Hong Merchant Association's business would be much more popular than the other stores. It was obvious that it had something special. North Sea Dragon Fish Bile, price 588 spirit jades. Mysterious Water Drop, price 649 spirit jades. Earth Snake Skin, price 320 spirit jades. After scanning through a row of display cabinets, Lin Yi's horizons were already widened. These were all things that Lin Yi had never heard of in the secular world. Although there was no specific introduction to these items, just from the appearance, it was obvious that they were not ordinary items. Moreover, Lin Yi found that in this Hong Merchant Association, there was not a single item priced below 100 spirit jades. Not to mention the outer street and the middle street. Even the other stores in the inner street paled in comparison. They were almost not on the same level. No wonder it could attract so many elite disciples of the 3 pavilions. The Hong Merchant Association store was divided into 3 floors, arranged in a pyramid shape. The higher the floor, the smaller the space, and the number of items on display decreased. Of course, the price of each item on display increased by a lot. Some items were already priced at thousands of spirit jades. It was common sense that the items on the second floor were always better than those on the first floor. He went up to the second floor and took a quick look around. He did not intend to stay for too long. After all, due to his lack of money, it would be a waste of time to look at more items. As for the third floor, Lenny originally wanted to go up and broaden his horizons. However, he was stopped by the people from the Hong Merchant Association. The third floor was the Hong Merchant Association's VIP area. Only VIPs who had spent more than 1,000 spirit jades were qualified to enter. The inner street was already a VIP place in the market, and the Hong Merchant Association was one of the best stores in the inner street. Wouldn't the restricted third floor be a fighter jet among VIPs? Lenny secretly speculated that people who could enter here. He was already a big shot, who could be ranked in the entire North Island of Heaven Stage Island. Although he was very curious about the items on the third floor, since they had set such a rule, Lenny could only suppress his curiosity for the time being and turn to go downstairs. However, at this moment, his heart suddenly palpitated, as if he had missed something important. Lenny wasn't sure what was going on when the ghost's voice sounded in his head. "Don't leave yet. Go take a look at the corner of the right shelf." Although it had been living in the jade space for some time, it had rarely taken the initiative to speak, unless it was something very important. Could it be that he had discovered some great treasure? With doubts in his heart, Lenny followed the ghost thing's instructions and quietly walked to the corner of the display. Because there were no eye-catching items, there were obviously fewer people here than in other places. At this moment, there was only one person standing next to Lenny. Judging by his attire, he should be an inner sect disciple of the Soaring Sky Pavilion. "Senior Ghost, you mean here?" Lenny communicated with the ghost thing through his consciousness. "Yes, this star inkstone is good stuff. Think of a way to get it," the ghost thing said. "Star inkstone." Lenny looked around. There were only 2 or 3 items on display. Soon, he found what the ghost thing was talking about, star inkstone. However, there was no label on the star inkstone, only a price. It was placed in the corner of the display. It was shaped like a black stone the size of a fist. From the outside, it looked completely unremarkable, but its price was quite shocking, 1,000 spirit jades. Compared to the other expensive items, this star inkstone with a price of 1,000 spirit jades was not only unremarkable, it also didn't seem to have any use for it. In the eyes of others, it was simply a scam. As a result, no one stopped by. But Lenny knew that this star inkstone was not simple, because in the instant that he saw it, he once again felt the same throbbing in his heart. It was as if he had a telepathic connection, and this seemingly ordinary stone was constantly attracting him. Could it be that this was some sort of treasure that had been overlooked by others? Lenny didn't quite understand. He asked the ghost thing, "Senior Ghost, what use does this star inkstone have?" "There's no point in telling you right now. Think of a way to get it first." After saying this, the ghost thing no longer paid any attention to Lenny. Only Lenny was left staring at the pitch-black stone in front of him, completely baffled. Lenny rolled his eyes, somewhat speechless. Why didn't it say what use it had? It just randomly asked me to get my hands on this stone. 1,000 spirit jades. How could it be so easy to get? Thankfully, he had a cheating artifact like the space in the jade pendant. If it were anyone else, they would have been so scared that their legs would have turned to jelly upon hearing this price. But grumbling was just grumbling. Lenny also knew that if he missed out on this star inkstone, he would definitely regret it in the future. Even if he didn't mention the ghost thing, just based on that strange telepathic connection just now, he couldn't let it go so easily. Lenny silently observed the star inkstone. At the same time, he discovered that for some reason, the inner court disciple of the Soaring Sky Pavilion also seemed to be very interested in this star inkstone. His burning gaze seemed to want to buy it on the spot, but his expression was conflicted. It seemed that he didn't have that many spirit jades on hand. 1,000 spirit jades. Even for an inner court disciple of the three great pavilions, it was already a huge sum of money. It was impossible for an ordinary disciple to have so many spirit jades. Only a young master with a deep background like Su Lingchong, or a high-ranking steward who held great power within the three great pavilions, could possibly take out such a sum. Linny couldn't help but secretly let out a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the star inkstone's price was high enough. Otherwise, this person would have bought it first. Then he really wouldn't know what to do. But even if this person couldn't gather so many spirit jades in a short time, he didn't look like an ordinary disciple. At the very least, he gave off a feeling that he was much stronger than someone like Meng Jueguang, who knew when he would be able to gather 1,000 spirit jades. If he wanted to obtain the star inkstone, he had to be ahead of the other party. Thus at this moment, Linny still felt a sense of urgency. Chapter 36-27. Not to mention the fact that Linny wouldn't stay in the mining area for so long. By that time, the star inkstone would have already been bought by someone else. Thus, if he wanted to obtain the star inkstone, he had to think of a way to quickly earn spirit jades. It seemed that he had to find some time to test the feasibility of exchanging good jade for useless jade. Linny secretly made up his mind. Apart from this, the speed at which he could earn spirit jades was too slow. Only this idea could maximize the effect of the jade space. Of course, this also had a lot of risk, so he had to test it out. Just as Linny was secretly observing the star inkstone, the soaring sky pavilion inner court disciple next to him turned around to look at him. He was shocked to find that someone else knew the same thing as him, and his eyes were filled with the hostility of a competitor. However, after seeing Lin Yi's attire, this person's gaze became much more contemptuous, as if he no longer cared about Lin Yi. This wasn't strange, because in order to deceive others, Lin Yi had not only changed his face with the 1,000 silk mask, but his attire was also not the signature attire of the welcoming pavilion's new disciples, nor was it the attire of the three great pavilions' inner court disciples. Thus, in the eyes of bystanders, he was just a grassroots loose cultivator. Although the market square was open to all the cultivators of the northern island, compared to the disciples of the three great pavilions, grassroots loose cultivators were clearly the lowest group of people. Wanting this group of poor and shabby people to take out an astronomical, some like 1,000 spirit jades, was more difficult than ascending to the heavens. This kind of person should be thanking the heavens and earth for taking advantage of the opening of the inner street to look around. Yet he still wanted to buy a treasure worth 1,000 spirit jades? Dream on. However, although he looked down on Lin Yi, this poor and shabby grassroots loose cultivator, it couldn't change the fact that this soaring sky pavilion inner court disciple was also embarrassingly poor. After greedily looking at the star inkstone a few more times, he could only resentfully turn around and leave. As he passed by Lin Yi, he said disdainfully, "Even a toad wants to eat swan meat. There really are all kinds of people in this day and age." Looking at the man's back, Lin Yi smiled faintly and shook his head. If one day he was the first to eat the swan meat, he didn't know what kind of expression this guy would have. After visiting the Hong Chamber of Commerce, Lin Yi took this opportunity to walk around the other shops in the inner street. Because he was concerned about the star inkstone, he didn't pay any particular attention to the other items. As for the heart-devouring exquisite grass that he had previously anticipated, he couldn't find it even after searching the entire inner street. It seemed that he would have to think of a way to obtain it during the Welcome Pavilion's newcomer trial. Leaving the market square, Lin Yi returned to his immortal cave. He sorted out the 5 kinds of medicinal herbs that he had bought before and placed them next to the jade pendant medicinal cauldron. This medicine cauldron was specially made for him by Han Jingjing when he was in the secular world. As long as the medicinal ingredients were prepared and placed in it, and the true qi of a heaven stage strength was injected, it could automatically refine a 3rd-grade medicinal pill. And if the true qi of a heaven stage great perfection was injected, it could refine a 4th-grade heavenly Tao golden pill. It could be said to be a true divine tool for alchemy. Thinking of Han Jingjing, Lin Yi suddenly became a little absent-minded. She had also come to this heavenly island, but she wasn't on the northern island. At this moment, where was she? Jingjing, are you okay? Thank you for developing the automatic divine pesticide cauldron for me. Thinking of Han Jingjing, Lin Yi's gaze became resolute. For the sake of these familiar people, Lin Yi had to continue moving forward. Now that he wanted to refine the heavenly Tao golden pill, it could be said that everything was ready except for the east wind. Next, as long as he could get his hands on the heart-devouring exquisite grass, everything would be fine. Apart from refining the heavenly Tao golden pill to increase his strength, Lin Yi's other task now was to quickly earn spirit jades. After all, that piece of star inkstone might be bought at any time. The most reliable choice was to gather 1,000 spirit jades within a month and rush to buy it on the next opening day of the inner street. Otherwise, a long night would bring many dreams. However, the matter of exchanging good jade for useless jade still had to be carefully planned. If he rashly carried it out before then, he was afraid that it might attract unexpected trouble. The next day, Lin Yi went to Jade Spirit Hall to mine as usual. However, at the entrance, he coincidentally bumped into Meng Jueguang and Meng Tong. He didn't know if these two deliberately blocked the way here. Seeing Lin Yi's figure from afar, Meng Tong immediately said impatiently, "Yo, isn't this the pretentious newbie? You've only rested for a day, and your chest tightness has already recovered? Junior brother Lin Yi, if your chest is tight, I suggest you rest for a few more days." Meng Jueguang pretended to be understanding and chuckled. "Senior brother, I don't dare to say anything else, but I can still grant you a few days of leave. After all, you're our Blue Cloud Pavilion super newbie. If you become depressed because you can't dig out any good jade, then your senior brother will have committed a great sin. Don't you think so?" Lin Yi glanced at the two of them, and a playful smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He said, "Thank you for your understanding, senior brother Meng. However, after resting for a day yesterday, I've already adjusted my luck and accumulated quite a bit of karma. Who knows, I might be able to explode today." Puffed. Upon hearing this, Meng Jueguang and Meng Tong both burst out laughing. Adjusted your luck? Accumulated karma? It turned out that this guy was actually an idiot. He could even say such stupid words. There was really no end to the path of idiocy. Haha, I didn't expect you to have such an amazing ability. Junior brother Lin Yi is indeed a genius who can stand out in the secular world. Then go ahead and dig. Today, please show us that you have an outburst. When the time comes, I'll definitely organize all the newbies in Blue Cloud Pavilion to observe and learn from you. Let's wait and see." Meng Jueguang and his companion laughed hysterically. They almost fainted from laughing so hard that they almost fainted. To think that the two of them had treated this idiot as their enemy. Now that they thought about it, they were simply blind. This Lin Yi, other than having good luck, was really useless. However, I Meng Jueguang am known as the Terminator of Luck. Let's wait and see. Then let's wait and see. Lin Yi turned around and entered mine number 10. 12 hours passed in the blink of an eye. It was time to hand over the work. Meng Jueguang had already gathered a bunch of newbies and waited at the door. Since this retard, Lin Yi, had taken the initiative to make a fool of himself and was eager to be abused, there was no reason to stop him. Of course, they had to cooperate fully. As usual, Lin Yi was the last to appear. When Meng Jueguang saw him, the first thing he said was, "Come, give a round of applause to our super newbie. Let him show us how he explodes today." Chapter 36-28. Meng Jueguang rejoiced inwardly. If he hadn't found someone to explore mine number 10 before, he might not have had the confidence to do so. But now, he was certain that Lin Yi wouldn't be able to dig up any good jade. So the more people who saw this, the better. He immediately said loudly, "Let me introduce to those who don't know the situation. This is our Blue Cloud Pavilion's newcomer, Lin Yi. He guaranteed that he would be able to dig up good jade from mine number 10 today. If everyone has nothing else to do, please come and witness it." He can dig up good jade from mine number 10? This guy must be sick in the head. The others who were attracted over snorted disdainfully. Not necessarily. A few days ago, There was a rumor that someone dug up good jade from mine number 10, and it wasn't a small amount. Could it be this guy? Someone in the crowd retorted. Meng Jueguang turned his head to look at that person, and said with a disdainful smile, "Then, do you want to make a bet with me? If Lin Yi dug up more than 3 pieces of good jade today, I will give you 10 pieces of spiritual jades. But if he doesn't dig up 3, you don't have to give me 10 pieces of spiritual jades. Just give me 5, oh no, 3 pieces. How about it? Do you dare to make this bet?" I don't want to bet." That person immediately flinched. He had only heard about Lin Yi being able to dig up good jade from mine number 10. How could he dare to bet his hard-earned money on this bet? "TSK, since you don't have the guts, why are you so arrogant, you coward?" Meng Jueguang sneered. His words made that person's face turn red. Meng Jueguang pointed at another person beside him and said, "You, looking at your expression, you seem to believe that Lin Yi can dig up good jade. Do you want to make a bet with me?" "I don't dare." The person who was pointed at by Meng Jueguang quickly shrunk his neck, causing the others to burst into laughter. Meng Jueguang curled his lips in disdain. He then pointed at the others and said, You, and you. Do you dare to bet with me? You can win 10 yuan with just 3 yuan. This is a rare opportunity. If you miss this opportunity, you won't get it again." Those who were pointed out by Meng Jueguang all became cowards, not daring to make a sound. What a joke! For miners like them, they could only earn 3 pieces of spiritual jades after a month of hard work. Who would be so stupid as to spend a month's hard-earned money on a complete stranger, Lin Yi, digging out more than 3 pieces of good jade in the 10th dead mining area? This was a bet that they would definitely lose. Whoever agreed to it was definitely an idiot. A bunch of spineless cowards. Meng Jueguang glanced around proudly, and his gaze finally fell on 2 people. He teased, "Xiao Ran, Xiao Hongkai, aren't you 2 Lin Yi's supporters? Don't you want to bet? Don't tell me you look down on your boss, Lin Yi, and want to switch to Meng Tong's faction." Although these words were unpleasant to hear, it was still a wise choice. "I won't stop you." After being called out by Meng Jueguang in front of everyone, everyone's gaze instantly focused on the 2 of them. Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai were at a loss of what to do. The 2 of them did not sign up to mine at the mining area, so under normal circumstances, they would not appear here. This time, it was Meng Jueguang who had specially instructed Meng Tong to call the 2 of them over, so that they could witness Lin Yi's miserable state. To put it bluntly, it was to kill the chicken to warn the monkey. Since this was Meng Jueguang's order, Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai naturally did not dare to disobey. Moreover, these days, Lin Yi's matter in the mining area had caused an uproar. As the saying goes, seeing is better than hearing about it. As Lin Yi's faction, it was reasonable for the 2 of them to be concerned about Lin Yi's situation. However, they did not expect such a thing to happen. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, Meng Jueguang forced the 2 of them to express their stance. If they were to be like the others and say that they did not want to bet, not only would it be embarrassing, it would also make Lin Yi and even his senior brother feel disappointed. One had to know that the 2 of them were able to have their current cultivation cave abode. It was all thanks to Lin Yi's blessing. If they did not stand up to support Lin Yi now, wouldn't they be ungrateful? Could it be that Meng Jueguang said that they would really switch to Meng Tong's faction? However, if they wanted to bet, the 2 of them did not have the capital to do so. Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai only had 2 pieces of spiritual jades in their hands. These were the spiritual jades that Meng Jueguang had given to them previously. They had almost used up all the spiritual qi of heaven and earth. If they lost the bet and could not take out the spiritual jades, wouldn't that be giving others a weakness? At that time, no matter how Meng Jueguang wanted to deal with them, they would not be able to say a word of complaint. Moreover, judging from Lin Yi's current situation, once they agreed to this bet, they would almost certainly lose. There was not even the slightest possibility of getting lucky. Gambling, they did not have the capital to do so. If they did not gamble, they would be ungrateful. For a moment, Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai were in a dilemma. Under the mocking gazes of the crowd, Meng Tong chuckled and said, "Although the 2 of you are trash, and even the way you look at people is a complete mess, But on account of the fact that we are fellow disciples, and on account of ninth cousin's face, I can reluctantly accept the two of you. In the future, you just have to serve me tea and water every day. Wahahaha. Serve tea and water? This was something that a small servant would do. As a dignified heaven-ranked expert, he was a powerful existence that was respected by tens of thousands of people. How could he be a servant? Moreover, it was impossible for the two of them to reconcile with Meng Tong. The crowd roared with laughter. Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongcai's faces instantly turned red. They wanted to open their mouths to refute, but they did not know what to say. After all, they did not have the spiritual jades on hand. Even if they wanted to accept the challenge, they did not have the confidence to do so. Seeing that they were about to lose face, Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongcai were prepared to grit their teeth and endure this humiliation. Suddenly, a familiar voice came from outside. You guys bet with him. If you lose, I will pay the spiritual jades. The crowd instantly became restless. When they saw the face of the person clearly, Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongcai could not help but be overjoyed. On the other hand, Meng Jueguang's face suddenly turned gloomy. I was wondering who was so arrogant. So it's junior brother Bitter Guy. Senior brother Bitter Guy walked over and looked at Meng Jueguang. Senior brother Meng, I will pay the spiritual jades that they bet with you. There shouldn't be a problem, right? Chapter 36-29. Alright then. Senior brother Bitter's face stiffened. Although he was on Lin Yi's side, even he did not think that Lin Yi would be able to dig out more than 3 pieces of good jade in dead mine number 10. Meng Jueguang's words were purely to make him lose more and more miserably. However, even if he was not optimistic about Lin Yi, senior brother Bitter had no choice but to grit his teeth and agree. This was because today's matter was deliberately instigated by Meng Jueguang. It was no longer a matter of winning or losing. It had evolved into a head-on confrontation between the two factions of the Blue Cloud Pavilion's newcomers. Meng Jueguang, Meng Tong, and the other newcomers were on one side. Senior brother Bitter, Lin Yi, and Xiao Ran were on the other side. The battlefield of this confrontation was this gambling house. Under such circumstances, even if he knew that this gambling house was bound to lose, senior brother Bitter could only choose to lose the jade, but not the face. Although losing 5 pieces of spiritual jades was painful for him, in order to maintain the confidence of Lin Yi and the others in him, he could only accept it. Senior brother Bitter, if we lose this time, we will definitely save up the spiritual jades and return them to you in the future. Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongcai looked at each other and said to senior brother Bitter gratefully. Although the two of them knew that they had no choice but to gamble in this situation, and there was a 99% chance that they would lose. No matter what, senior marshal brother Bitter Corner was involved because of the two of them. So the two of them should be the ones to fork out the spirit jades. Even if they did not have enough spiritual jades now, they would be able to return them in the future. It's meaningless for the two of you to say this. Even if I lose this time, it doesn't matter. No matter what, I am a steward senior brother. I can still afford to lose these few pieces of spiritual jades. And then again, if you support Lin Yi, isn't that equivalent to supporting me? How can I let you pay for it? Senior brother Bitter smiled, but no matter how you looked at it, his smile looked bitter. 5 pieces of spiritual jades. For a low-level steward like senior marshal brother, who had no other means, this was a precious savings that could only be saved up for a few months. Lin Yi could not help but feel touched when he saw this scene. A friend in need is a friend indeed. It was precisely because of this that senior brother, Xiao Ran, and Xiao Hongcai were in dire straits. At this time, it was even more precious for them to stand up and support him. If these people had a lot of spiritual jades in their hands, it would not be strange for them to come forward and make this bet with Meng Jueguang. Just now, when Meng Jueguang was forcing Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongcai, Lin Yi wanted to come forward and stop him. But now that senior brother Bitter was here, there was no need to waste too much effort. After all, he was the person involved. He definitely knew how many good jades there were, and how many useless ones. At this time, if he participated in the bet directly, He might scare Meng Jueguang away. Lin Yi immediately smiled. Without saying anything more, he directly carried the basket and weighed it. Then he sent it to the quality inspection. Today he was destined to give these people a big surprise. Everyone was looking forward to it. Soon the quality inspection officer gave the result. Lin Yi, 12 pieces of good jade, 7 pieces of useless jade, 20 pieces of garbage jade. Damn! 12 pieces of good jade. The whole place was in a complete mess, especially the confident Meng Jueguang and Meng Tong. This time, they were so shocked that they almost fell to the ground. Senior brother Ma, the prospecting expert, had clearly promised that there would at most be 30 to 40 pieces of good jade in the number 10 dead mine, and it would take at least 2 to 3 months to dig all of them out. In other words, under normal circumstances, Lin Yi would be considered lucky if he could dig out 1 piece of good jade in a day. As for digging out 3 pieces in a day, that was simply impossible. Otherwise, Meng Jueguang would not dare to open his mouth and say that the odds were 3 to 10. After that, he even set a bet of 5 to 15. He had predicted that Lin Yi would not be able to dig out 3 pieces of good jade. That was why he dared to make such a bet. In the end, he dug out 12 pieces in a day. Instantly, everyone was so shocked that they did not dare to speak. 12 pieces of good jade in a day. What kind of concept was this? Not only could this instantly beat all of the number 7 mines under Blue Cloud Pavilion, even Mysterious Pavilion's number 5 and number 6 mines would be directly overshadowed. The number 4 mine was fine, but that was already Mysterious Pavilion's best and highest quality mine. Taking in everyone's shocked and bewildered expressions, Lin Yi could not help but reveal a mocking smile. In order to verify what he had said to Meng Jueguang and Meng Tong in the morning, he had deliberately hidden 3 pieces of spiritual jade today. Only then could he justifiably dig out 12 pieces of good jade and blind everyone's dog eyes. With the previous day's fruitless results as a foundation, Lin Yi had calculated that even if he suddenly exploded today, it would not raise any unwarranted suspicions. At most, they would think that he was just as lucky as before. But this time, his luck was especially explosive. Compared to the shock and bewilderment of the others, Senior Brother Bitter, Xiao Ran, and Xiao Hongkai were ecstatic. The 3 of them had originally thought that they would definitely lose this time. Senior Brother Bitter was even prepared to take out the 5 pieces of spiritual jade in his bosom. They did not expect that Lin Yi would actually give them such an incomparably huge surprise without saying a word. In this way, not only did Senior Brother Bitter not need to lose 5 pieces of spiritual jade, according to the previous bet, Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai would be able to win 15 pieces of spiritual jade from Meng Jueguang. For the few of them who had long believed that they would lose, this was simply an unexpected windfall. Even if they won the lottery in the secular world, it would not be more than this. Meng Jueguang looked at the few of them who were overjoyed, and his face instantly turned extremely ugly. At this moment, he even wanted to give himself 2 slaps. Why did they make a bet with such a cheap mouth? Wasn't it a good thing to watch Lin Yi make a fool of himself? Otherwise, even if he did not watch, he would not have suffered such a huge loss. 15 pieces of spiritual jade. Even for the slick Meng Jueguang, this was already a huge sum of money. If he really lost to Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai, these 2 fellows whom he had always disliked, he was afraid that his liver would be in pain for the rest of the month. Let's go. Meng Jueguang quietly gave Meng Tong a meaningful look. He wanted to take advantage of the fact that everyone was still in shock to quietly slip away from the crowd. As long as he was not caught on the spot, with his convenient identity as the senior brother in charge, he could completely find an excuse to avoid this gambling debt in the future. However, Lin Yi had been staring at him for a long time. Obviously, he would not let him do as he wished. He immediately said loudly, "Senior Brother Meng, where are you in a hurry to go?" Chapter 3630. Since Senior Meng is not in a hurry to go, then please honor the bet just now. All the brothers and sisters here can be witnesses to prove that Senior Meng is a man of his word and is open and above board. Lin Yi smiled faintly. After experiencing so many things before, He and Meng Jueguang were already irreconcilable like fire and water. With such a great opportunity that was delivered to his doorstep, he naturally had to let Meng Jueguang pay. With that said, not only Senior Kubai, Xiao Ran, and Xiao Hongkai, but also the others looked at Meng Jueguang with anticipation. After all, 15 pieces of spiritual jade was not a small amount. To be able to witness this scene with their own eyes, it would be a good topic of conversation in the future. These cultivators, who led boring lives every day, always liked to watch a good show. Even if they did not participate in it personally, as onlookers, they were more excited than the people involved. Fuck. This brat is really fucking treacherous. Meng Jueguang secretly cursed. After hearing what Lin Yi said, he was completely in a difficult position. According to Lin Yi's words, if he did not honor the bet now, wouldn't he be seen as a treacherous villain in the eyes of others? But this was a total of 15 pieces of spiritual jade. If he really took it out just like that, wouldn't his heart bleed in the future? Seeing that Meng Jueguang was still hesitating, Lin Yi said again, Senior Meng, don't tell me that you don't have so many spiritual jades with you? That shouldn't be the case. For someone like Senior Meng who keeps his word, since he dared to make this bet just now, he must have prepared so many spiritual jades in his pocket. Otherwise, wouldn't his words be like farts? With so many pairs of eyes watching, I think our Senior Meng would definitely not do such a stupid thing. The meaning behind his words was too obvious. For a moment, everyone looked at Meng Jueguang with a playful expression. If he continued to delay like this, he would definitely be killed. If he continued to delay like this, it would almost solidify the image of him talking like farts. If these words were spread, not to mention establishing any prestige in the future, no matter where he went, he would be pointed at. Meng Jueguang was a person who wanted to climb up. Naturally, he would not allow himself to carry such a stain. He had to bite the bullet and said, Why are you in such a hurry? Did I say I won't give it on the spot? What a villain. But this is a mining area. My spiritual jades are all in my private workshop outside. I have to go out before I can give them to you. Everyone came to a sudden realization. Meng Jueguang's words were reasonable, given the strict supervision procedures of Spirit Jade Hall. Under normal circumstances, no one was allowed to bring anything in. Naturally, spiritual jades were included. In fact, even if they wanted to bring anything in, they would not be able to, much less bring it out. In the nature, they were equivalent to half of the staff of Lingyu Hall. Lingyu Master Jueguang. Because they had to come here every year to help supervise the newcomers, they were equivalent to half of the staff of Lingyu Hall. Therefore, they had their own private workshop. Usually, they could rest here and also use it for storage. From Meng Jueguang's point of view, even if he really brought so many spiritual jades to Lingyu Hall, it must be stored in his own private workshop. That's fine. Anyway, it's just a few steps away. If fellow brothers and sisters are interested, please come along and witness it. Lin Yi saw through Meng Jueguang's intention at a glance, and immediately shouted to the crowd. Everyone present was going out anyway. Since it was along the way, they were naturally happy to watch the show, and responded with a smile. Especially those who were pointed out by Meng Jueguang, but did not dare to bet. They were especially enthusiastic. They could not wait to see Meng Jueguang vomit blood. This cunning bastard. Meng Jueguang secretly cursed. After all, there were so many people following to watch the show. Even if it was just to worry about the impact, it was not good for him to think of other means to deal with it. He could only obediently do as he was told. Meng Jueguang's private workshop was not far from the entrance. Under the supervision of Lin Yi and the crowd of onlookers, Meng Jueguang quickly came out with the spiritual jades. However, when he was just about to hand over 15 pieces of spiritual jades, the bitter senior brother on the side suddenly said, Senior brother Meng, these should be good jades. You won't take out waste jades to fool us, right? Meng Jueguang's heart suddenly trembled. In order to avoid vomiting blood, he deliberately took out a bag of waste jades. As long as Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai did not verify it in person, he could get away with it just like how he deceived Lin Yi. If he was found to be waste jades after that, then he would be unscrupulous. He could completely say that the other party purposely used good jades as waste jades to frame him. At that time, everyone would have their reasons. As long as the public opinion was not one-sided, then he, Meng Jiuguang, could completely ignore it. It was originally a good plan, but now that the bitter senior brother mentioned it, this matter was not easy to carry out. After all, if it was really verified to be waste jades in front of everyone, then he, Meng Jiuguang, would lose all his face. Once his reputation was ruined, he would never be able to raise his head in the three great pavilions again. Meng Jiuguang could not help but secretly think that he had miscalculated. How could he forget about the bitter senior brother? Lin Yi, that idiot, did not know how to verify spiritual jades, but the bitter senior brother was still very experienced. How is that possible? As the steward senior brother, would I do such a shameless thing? You are really gauging the heart of a gentleman with your own mean measure. Meng Jiuguang retorted in a righteous manner. However, the hand that was reaching into his bosom to take out the spirit jades secretly trembled and replaced it with another bag of spirit jades. Fortunately, he had thought it through beforehand and prepared an extra bag of good spirit jades just in case. Otherwise, he would have really lost a lot of face this time. Under the instruction of the bitter senior brother, Xiao Ran took the bag of spiritual jades from Meng Jiuguang's hand and let Xiao Hongkai count them in person. After they were done, they nodded at each other. All of them were good jades full of spiritual energy. There were 15 pieces, not one less. Senior brother Meng is indeed the steward senior brother. Every spit is a nail. You are really a role model for my generation. Lin Yi looked at Meng Jiuguang with a smile that was not a smile. Meng Jiuguang could not help but grit his teeth. In his eyes, Lin Yi's expression was as hateful as it could be. If it were not for the influence, he would have personally taught Lin Yi a lesson to vent the hatred in his heart. Chapter 36-31. Therefore, in the final analysis, it was always Lin Yi who made Meng Jiuguang suffer. After experiencing so many things, he finally began to realize that as long as he did not kill Lin Yi, he would not have a good life. Just wait and see. Meng Jiuguang gave Lin Yi a hateful stare, then led Meng Tong and the others away. Looking at this scene, senior brother Ku could not help but remind him worriedly. Junior brother Lin, you have to be more careful in the future. Senior brother Meng has never been a person who is willing to suffer losses, especially to a newcomer like you. He will definitely think of all kinds of ways to get revenge on you. According to his usual style, he's unscrupulous. Senior brother Ku, don't worry. I know what I'm doing. Lin Yi smiled indifferently. In the face of powerful strength, all schemes and tricks were a joke. If Lin Yi's current strength of early-stage foundation establishment was not enough, then after he refined the Heavenly Path Golden Pill and advanced to the peak of early-stage foundation establishment, he could kill people like Meng Jiuguang in one move. Naturally, there was nothing to be afraid of. At this time, Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai discussed for a while, then handed over the bag containing 15 pieces of spiritual jade. Brother Lin, these spiritual jade are all earned by you. Both of us think that we can't accept it, so you should keep it. There are 15 pieces of spiritual jade here, and you two don't want it? Lin Yi looked at the two strangely. Although this bet was won because of him, and there was also the factor of forcing his senior brother, the two still took a huge risk to agree to the bet. Therefore, the 15 pieces of spirit jades belonged to the two of them. There was no doubt about it. Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai looked at each other and subconsciously swallowed. 15 pieces of spiritual jade. This was a huge sum of money that even a person like Meng Jiuguang would feel heartache over. It would be bullshit to say that the two of them were not envious at all. In fact, because the two of them were on Lin Yi's side, other than Xiao Ran's cave abode at the foot of the mountain, which was not bad, other cultivation resources were specially targeted by Meng Jiuguang. It could be said to be a complete mess. These 15 pieces of spiritual jades were like charcoal in a snowy day for the two of them. If everything went smoothly, it was very possible for them to succeed in building their foundation with these spiritual jades. However, although the two of them had won the 15 pieces of spiritual jades, The premise was that senior brother Kubai had given them the gambling capital. Moreover, senior brother Kubai had only stood out because of Lin Yi. In fact, if it wasn't for Lin Yi's miraculous performance, they wouldn't have been able to win. With Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongcai's temperament, even if they were tempted by the 15 pieces of spiritual jades, they couldn't just accept it with a clear conscience. Hee, the two of you don't have to be so polite with senior brother Kubai and me. You need these spiritual jades. If you can successfully build your foundation in the future, then it will be the best use of it, right? As for me, you don't have to worry at all. Just trust that I won't let you down. Lin Yi smiled and comforted them. Senior brother Kubai originally wanted to ask Lin Yi and the other two to divide the spiritual jades together. However, seeing that Lin Yi was so confident, he simply said, "Yes, the two of you keep it for yourselves. In the future, don't let junior brother Lin's painstaking efforts go to waste." This, Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongcai looked at each other. Seeing that Lin Yi really didn't want the spiritual jades, they could only nod and said, "All right then, I won't say any more polite words. If you need anything in the future, brother Lin, just tell us." When saying this, Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongcai had completely regarded themselves as Lin Yi's underlings. With their temperament, even if the 15 pieces of spiritual jades were tempting, it might not be enough to make them bow down. However, Lin Yi's performance since the first day had made the two of them sincerely convinced. They were willing to be under Lin Yi. Well said. Lin Yi smiled slightly. Although he had made enemies everywhere after coming to the Heaven Stage Island, he had unknowingly gathered a force. Senior brother Kubai, Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongcai. These people could be counted as his group. Their overall strength didn't seem strong, but there was still a long way to go. With Lin Yi's help, it was only a matter of time before these people grew into masters who could take charge of their own affairs. Lin Yi paused for a moment. Then he suddenly remembered something and said, "Oh, by the way, when you use these spiritual jades to cultivate, remember not to use up all the spiritual qi. Leave the last bit of spiritual qi for me. I will use it to fool people." Okay. Xiao Ran and Yi Zichen were slightly taken aback, but they didn't ask any questions and immediately agreed. On the other hand, upon hearing Lin Yi's words, the bitter senior martial brother couldn't help but feel a little puzzled. With only the last trace of spirit qi left, it would become a completely useless jade. Who was Lin Yi going to fool with this useless jade? Could it be that he wanted to cheat it from Meng Jueguang and the others? In fact, the fact that Lin Yi was cheated by Meng Jueguang with a piece of useless jade, although it hadn't been completely spread, there was still a hint of it from Meng Tong's mouth. People like Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongcai, who stayed in the cave and cultivated diligently all day long, didn't know about it, but the bitter senior martial brother had heard about it from others. He originally wanted to ask Lin Yi about it, but he was afraid of hurting Lin Yi's self-esteem, so he couldn't say it. Therefore, he specially came to see Lin Yi today. He didn't expect to encounter the scene of the bet just now. Junior martial brother Lin. In fact, I also have some waste jade with only the last trace of spirit qi. If you need it, I will send it to you in a few days. The bitter senior martial brother said on the side. Although it was known that waste jade with thin spirit qi had no value, and could neither be used for cultivation nor for trading, but people like the bitter senior martial brother would still leave the last trace of spirit qi to preserve it, so that the spirit jade would not break directly. He didn't have any ulterior motives, but Spirit Jade Hall had a waste jade recycling regulation. As long as 1,000 pieces of unbroken waste jade were collected, they could bring it to Spirit Jade Hall to exchange for a piece of good jade full of spirit qi. It was just that it was very troublesome to do so, and the return rate was very low. So many people disdained it. After all, for the vast majority of people, they might not even have 1,000 pieces of spirit jade in their lifetime, let alone waste jade used for cultivation. Chapter 36-32. But now that Lin Yi said that he had a use for the waste jade, senior brother Kupa, who was willing to take out good jade, would naturally not be reluctant to part with this bit of waste jade. Thank you, Senior Brother Koopa, Linny said happily. According to his plan, if he wanted to successfully buy the star inkstone, he had to be ahead of the other competitors, such as the inner sect disciple of the Soaring Sky Pavilion, whom he met at the Hong Chamber of Commerce. They might not be able to take out 1,000 spirit jade in a short amount of time, but for safety's sake, Linny felt that it was best to buy the inkstone before next month's open day in the inner streets. He'd have to wait for another month, and that would be troublesome. Therefore, he was in urgent need of waste jade. And Senior Brother Koopa was like charcoal in snowy weather. Hey, what's there to thank? It's only 300 or 400 pieces of waste jade. Anyway, it's useless to pile them up there. If you need them, I'll give them all to you. Senior Brother Koopa laughed. Although he was saving up the waste jade to exchange for good jade at Jade Spirit Hall, the value was not high. It was equivalent to saving old newspapers in the secular world and selling them as waste. He was more than happy to be able to help Linny. Meng Jueguang kept giving Meng Tong cultivation resources, and he was also a senior brother in charge. What was a few pieces of waste jade? It was not even worth a piece of good jade. Therefore, when Senior Brother Koopa saw that Linny was happy, he felt that he was not so useless. So many? That couldn't be better. Linny immediately breathed a sigh of relief. Although he had the jade space, 1,000 spirit jade wasn't a small number. It was an astronomical number that most practitioners couldn't even dream of in their lifetimes. Even for Linny, it was a challenge to gather that much jade in a month. Linny was a man with a lot of spirit jade, but he didn't think that he would be able to gather that much in 1 month. Senior Brother Koopa had solved 1/3 of the problem. The pressure on Linny's body suddenly lessened. Next, he just had to think about how to use his good jade to exchange for the waste jade in the hands of others. From the looks of it, collecting 1,000 pieces of spirit jade in a month was not an impossible task. However, even so, it was still quite a challenge. If he couldn't find a suitable reason, and took the initiative to exchange his own good jade for someone else's used jade, this matter would be too strange. It would easily attract the attention of people with ulterior motives. When that time came, it would be troublesome. At this moment, what Linny didn't know was that he was still having a headache about how to find someone to exchange the jade. His rival Meng Tong had already unknowingly helped him solve this problem. In the future, Meng Tong didn't even need to think about it. Meng Tong had already taken the initiative to send waste jades to him. When he realized this, Linny couldn't help but sigh from the bottom of his heart. Meng Jueguang and Meng Tong really deserved their reputation as super nice people. Senior Brother Koopa accompanied Linny and the others all the way back to the cave residence. Before he left, he suddenly remembered something. He slapped his head and said, "Oh right, I almost forgot to tell you. Tomorrow is the annual Public Guidance Day. Each of the 3 great pavilions will send an elder to welcome the new pavilion and specially guide you newcomers in your cultivation. According to the rules of previous years, everyone can ask 3 questions. Go back tonight and think about it. This is a very rare opportunity. Don't waste it." The reason why he specially came today, other than to see if he could help Linny, was for this matter. Although it was reasonable to say that this matter was personally notified by Meng Jueguang in the past, Senior Brother Koopa really didn't trust Meng Jueguang's character. Therefore, he specially came to inform Linny and the others. Now it seemed that looking at the expressions of Linny, Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai, he was really right to come. Public Guidance Day. Linny, Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai were stunned at the same time. Listening to Senior Brother Koopa's tone, it was a very important matter. Meng Jueguang, the eldest senior brother in charge, didn't mention a word to the 3 of them. It was estimated that he couldn't wait for the 3 of them to miss it for no reason. His intentions were really sinister. Although each person could only ask 3 questions, the other party was a big shot at the level of the elders of the 3 pavilions. Needless to say, his cultivation realm was far above that of ordinary people. It was very rare to get the opportunity to be personally guided by such a super master. It was not an exaggeration to say that it could be encountered but not sought. 4 newcomers like Linny, If this opportunity was grasped well, the benefits they could get would be far more than the elixirs and spiritual jades they usually dreamed of. Maybe a few words of advice from the other party could save them decades, or even hundreds of years of detours in the future. What a precious opportunity it was. Thank you for the reminder, Senior Brother Koopa. Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai obviously also realized that this opportunity was rare. After thanking him, they carried the spiritual jades and returned to their respective cave residences eagerly. Looking at the expressions of the two people, it was estimated that they would spend the whole night thinking about what questions to ask. Looking at the back of the two people, Senior Brother Koopa couldn't help but laugh, then turned his head to look at Lin Yi and said earnestly, "Junior Brother Lin, I know that your strength, talent, and temperament are far superior to ordinary people. But once you miss the opportunity to ask questions to the elders of the three pavilions, it may be difficult to encounter it again in the future. So you must grasp it well tomorrow." Senior Brother Koopa, don't worry, I know the importance. Linny nodded. In fact, Linny had just realized that compared to others, he needed to grasp this opportunity more. However, what Linny was going to ask was not the cultivation that everyone was concerned about, but a more critical and important question for him. The next day, the sun had just risen. If Senior Brother Koopa hadn't specifically reminded him last night, Linny would have gone to Lingyu Hall to mine at this time. But now he was waiting early in the main hall of the Welcome Pavilion like other newcomers. When he saw Lin Yi and the other two appear, Meng Jueguang's eyelids twitched obviously, and he spat with some disappointment. Although he also knew that because of the existence of Senior Brother Koopa, the idea of making Lin Yi and the other two miss the public guidance day was a little naive, he still couldn't help but want to play tricks. His heart was still bleeding from losing 15 spiritual jades yesterday. If he didn't find a chance to get it back, it would be really difficult to calm down. Small characters like Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai were still secondary. If he could find a way to make Lin Yi, his nemesis, suffer on this guidance day, it would be best to make him regret it for the rest of his life. That would be really satisfying. Chapter 36-33. Not to mention the elders of the other two pavilions, even the elders of his own Blue Cloud Pavilion, were big shots, who stood at the top of the entire North Island of Heaven Stage Island. How could Meng Jueguang, a small steward at the bottom, speak to them? As the saying goes, the Prime Minister's doorstep is a 7th grade official. Even the lowest handyman around these elders was a big shot that Meng Jueguang had to look up to. Even if he wanted to flatter them, he might not be able to do so. As for talking to these elders directly, it was simply a pipe dream. Even if he really had such a dream, Meng Jueguang might still be trembling in fear in his dream. At this time, there was a sudden commotion in the crowd. The sharp-eyed newcomers had already found that the elders of the three pavilions had finally arrived, accompanied by a large group of people led by Pavilion Master, Hu Yinfeng in the distance. Got it. Meng Jueguang's eyes suddenly lit up. He saw an acquaintance among the three elders. It was Su Lingchong, young Master Su. Looking at his posture in front of the three elders, wouldn't it be a simple matter to ask him to help deal with Lin Yi? It was not strange for Su Lingchong to appear here, because this time, the elder of the Soaring Sky Pavilion was one of the members of the Supreme Elders Guild of the entire Heaven Stage Island's North Island. The third elder of the Soaring Sky Pavilion, who was also Su Lingchong's grandfather, Su Yuanzheng. As for the other two elders who came together, they were Xia Xian, the fifth elder of Mysterious Pavilion, and Zhao Hongba, the fourth elder of Blue Cloud Pavilion. Among the three elders, although Xia Xian of Mysterious Pavilion and Zhao Hongba of Blue Cloud Pavilion were also big shots that countless people looked up to, compared with Su Yuanzheng, their status was still a notch lower. The reason was simple. Neither of them was a member of the Elders' Union, but Su Yuanzheng was one of them. He could not enter the Elders' Union. It meant that he had no right to speak on many important matters of the three pavilions, and it meant that he was still one step away from the top level of the North Island. Therefore, even though Xia Xian and Zhao Hongba were both high and mighty elders, in front of Su Yuanzheng, a giant of the Elders' Council, they inevitably had to lower their heads. Very naturally, Su Yuanzheng became the undisputed #1 figure on the Welcoming Pavilion's Public Guidance Day, and his grandson Su Lingchong, who was brought along by his side, also became the focus of the entire audience. In front of the three elders he was calm and at ease. Out of respect for Su Yuanzheng, even the two elders Xie Exan and Zhao Hongba didn't have the slightest intention of being high and mighty when they spoke to Su Lingchong. Their speech and actions were filled with amiability, causing the bystanders to be extremely envious. As for Hu Yunfeng and the others who accompanied them, they did not receive such good treatment. Other than smiling apologetically, they didn't even dare to breathe loudly in front of these three elders. They were afraid that they would accidentally make one of the elders unhappy and bring disaster to themselves. However, in addition to trembling with fear, pavilion leader Hu Yunfeng was still very excited at the moment, because according to the usual practice in previous years, the elders sent by the three great pavilions to participate in the public instruction day were usually the lowest-ranked elders in their respective pavilions. Even people like Xie Exan and Zhao Hongba might not be willing to show up. But this year, it wasn't just these two. Even Su Yuanzheng showed up in person. Being in the Elders' Council was a giant figure in the whole North Island. Su Yuanzheng's appearance, for the small welcoming pavilion, it was an unprecedented event. It not only brought light to the entire welcoming pavilion, but also made Hu Yunfeng, the pavilion leader of the welcoming pavilion, proud. As long as he got Su Yuanzheng's approval, wouldn't it be a matter of course for him to have a meteoric rise in the future? Hu Yunfeng nodded to Su Lingchong gratefully. He knew that all this was Su Lingchong's credit. Without young Master Su's help, a giant of the Elders' Council like Su Yuanzheng would not come to the welcoming pavilion at all, and the elders of the other two pavilions, Xie Exan and Zhao Hongba, naturally would not come after hearing the news. The reason why the two of them came this time was to take the opportunity to get closer to Su Yuanzheng. So in the final analysis, it was all thanks to Su Lingchong that the welcoming pavilion could have such an exaggerated and luxurious lineup on the public guidance day. However, Su Lingchong obviously didn't care about this. The reason why he racked his brains to persuade his grandfather Su Yuanzheng to come to the welcoming pavilion to help Hu Yunfeng was just a convenience. The main purpose was to show off his power and let some blind nonentities, such as Lin Yi, feel what it was like to look up to a high mountain. Seeing the appearance of the three elders headed by Su Yuanzheng, the newcomers in the welcoming pavilion suddenly held their breath and stood on both sides, waiting for the three elders respectfully. Looking at the respectful behavior of the newcomers, Su Yuanzheng nodded slightly and said, "Little Yin is not bad." When these four light words fell into his ears, Hu Yunfeng suddenly felt as if he had eaten a miracle medicine. His whole body felt comfortable, and it gave people the feeling that his most taboo, the gray hair, had become much darker and more spirited. Although calling him Little Yun was somewhat feminine, and if others called him that, it would be insulting. However, it was different when these words came from Su Yuanzheng's mouth. Hu Yunfeng was overwhelmed by the favor. "Third elder, you flatter me. This is my responsibility." Hu Yunfeng quickly bowed and said. Originally, in this kind of public occasion, Hu Yunfeng, as the pavilion master of the welcoming pavilion, should call Su Yuanzheng Elder Su. After all, the third elder was the internal address for Su Yuanzheng by the Rising Sky Pavilion disciples. However, Hu Yunfeng still did so. His goal was to get close to Su Yuanzheng. After all, he was a Rising Sky Pavilion disciple, so it was not wrong to call him that. When Su Yuanzheng heard this, he looked at him with a smile that was not a smile. He saw through his intentions, but he did not point it out. Xie Exan and Zhao Hongba, who were at the side, frowned slightly, but they did not say anything for Su Yuanzheng's sake. Now that the independent divisions had been wantonly occupied by the Rising Sky Pavilion, this was already the general trend. The welcoming pavilion was only a microcosm, so it was meaningless for the two of them to make a mountain out of a molehill. The three elders went on stage, and Su Yuanzheng gave a brief lecture to the newcomers. Then they dispersed. The three elders were responsible for guiding the newcomers in their respective pavilions, and they entered the official phase of the public instruction day. However, during this process Lin Yi noticed a small interlude. Taking advantage of the gap, when Su Yuanzheng was lecturing the newcomers, Meng Jueguang, who was supposed to be in his own Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomer team, sneaked behind Su Lingchong and whispered something into his ear. During this time, the two of them looked in his direction with ill intentions. After that, Lin Yi and the other Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomers were led by Meng Jueguang into the third hall of the welcoming pavilion to wait. Zhao Hongba, the fourth elder of the Blue Cloud Pavilion, whispered a few words to Su Lingchong and delayed for a moment before walking in. Chapter 36-34. What the hell are these two up to? Seeing Meng Jueguang looking at him maliciously, Ling Yi's intuition told him that these people must be thinking of another way to trick him. However, when he thought about it, today was the public guidance day. No matter what, Zhao Hongba, the elder of the Blue Cloud Pavilion, would be involved. Not to mention the fact that Meng Jueguang's level was not high enough to hook up with him. In reality, even Su Lingchong, the young master, would not be able to order Zhao Hongba to do anything, not to mention framing Lin Yi. Firstly, their strength and status were completely unequal. Even if Zhao Hongba treated Su Lingchong differently for the sake of Su Yuanzheng, it was only limited to the courtesy of an elder. It was absolutely impossible for them to be on equal footing, and he would not lower his status to curry favor with the other party. Secondly, the higher one's status was, the more one had to pay attention to their image. Even if Zhao Hongba really listened to Su Lingchong's words and helped him deal with Lin Yi, the newcomer of Blue Cloud Pavilion, he definitely wouldn't dare to be too brazen. After all, if these words were to spread, he, the fourth elder of Blue Cloud Pavilion, would be drowned in the saliva of countless disciples of Blue Cloud Pavilion. Thinking up to here, Lin Yi couldn't help but feel a little more at ease. No matter what tricks Su Lingchong, Meng Jueguang, and the others were playing, as long as he smoothly asked the questions and obtained the answers he wanted, then everything would be fine. However, what Lin Yi didn't expect was that the first thing Zhao Hongba said when he came in was him. Who is Lin Yi? Lin Yi was taken aback. Following that, under the astonished gazes of the Blue Cloud Pavilion rookies, he calmly stood up and replying to fourth elder, "This disciple is Lin Yi." Zhao Hongba sized up Lin Yi and asked, "I heard that you have a good relationship with Lu Bianren?" As the fourth elder of Blue Cloud Pavilion, he had a lofty status. Naturally, he would not care about Lu Bianren, a mere third pavilion master of the Welcome Pavilion, and it was even more impossible for him to know about Lin Yi. These words were actually passed to his ears by Meng Jueguang through Su Lingchong's mouth. It was for the convenience of making an issue out of this and punishing Lin Yi. The development of the matter was far beyond his expectations, but Lin Yi was still unhurried. He nodded and said, "I don't dare. Pavilion Master Lu merely guided me." What a great way to help the younger generation advance. Zhao Hongba snorted and said, "Since he's so supportive of the younger generation, why didn't he show his face on such an important day? How disgraceful." Everyone looked at each other. Zhao Hongba, the fourth elder of Blue Cloud Pavilion, had openly criticized Lu Bianren. If this matter were to spread, it would be a disaster for Lu Bianren, who had already been marginalized by the Welcome Pavilion. But to be honest, Lu Bianren, the third pavilion master of the welcoming pavilion from Blue Cloud Pavilion, didn't even show up on such a day. This was indeed a bit unreasonable. If someone deliberately made an issue out of this matter, it was not impossible for Lu Bianren to be removed from the position of the third pavilion master of the welcoming pavilion. Lin Yi and senior brother Lu Bianren looked at each other helplessly. They instantly knew that Lu Bianren had been tricked. Moreover, it should be by Pavilion Master Hu Yinfeng, Deputy Pavilion Master Feng Song, and even Su Lingchong and Meng Jueguang. He had been tricked by this large group of people, intentionally or unintentionally. Lu Bianren was now stationed at the back cliff. Within a radius of 30 miles, not even a ghost could be seen. Although the Open Guidance Day was held every year, it had never been set a specific date. It was completely decided by the wishes of the three pavilion masters. In other words, if Hu Yinfeng and Feng Song hadn't sent someone to inform him, he wouldn't have known that today was the Open Guidance Day. He didn't even know whether today was the Open Guidance Day or not. Usually, without the permission of Pavilion Master Hu Yinfeng, Lu Bianren couldn't leave his post without permission. It was normal that he didn't show up at this time. However, he didn't expect that he would be scolded by Zhao Hongba in public because of this. If I had known, I would have sent a message to senior brother Lu yesterday. Senior brother Lu Bianren couldn't help but blame himself. He didn't expect that Pavilion Master Hu Yinfeng and the others would be so outrageous that they didn't even inform Lu Bianren about such an important thing as the Open Guidance Day. Moreover, he was busy helping Lin Yi and the others yesterday, so he didn't have time to go to the back cliff. However, if he had known in advance that the elder from Blue Cloud Pavilion was Zhao Hongba, he would have reminded Lu Bianren no matter what, because this fourth elder was the enemy of him and the backer of Blue Cloud Pavilion behind Lu Bianren. Once something went wrong, it was conceivable that Zhao Hongba would target Lu Bianren. However, it was a pity that he was just a small steward. How could he know the elder's arrangements in advance? At this time, senior brother Lu Bianren was only thinking that Lu Bianren was tricked, but Lin Yi thought further than him. Lin Yi had already expected that Lu Bianren being tricked was just a prelude, and he would definitely be implicated. Sure enough, Zhao Hongba's next sentence revealed his intentions. Since you have a good relationship with Lu Bianren, then I'll trouble you to make a trip and call him over, lest the other two pavilions' elders laugh at our Clear Cloud Pavilion's reputation. As expected, Lin Yi couldn't help but sneer in his heart. Although Zhao Hongba's words sounded reasonable, and he didn't mean to make things difficult for Lin Yi, today was a very rare Open Guidance Day. Once he missed it, he might not have the chance to make up for it in this life. Lu Bianren was now at the back cliff 15 kilometers away. Even if there were no delays in between, it would take at least an hour to go back and forth. By the time Lin Yi called Lu Bianren over, it was very likely that all the newcomers would have finished asking questions and answering questions. Seeing that Lin Yi was silent, Zhao Hongba couldn't help but frown slightly. What's wrong? You're not even willing to go and ask Lu Bianren for help? Are all the newcomers in Blue Cloud Pavilion of this quality now? Seeing this, Meng Jueguang interrupted at the right time. Fourth elder, this Lin Yi is a newcomer from the secular world. He has always been arrogant and doesn't know the rules. It's all my fault for not disciplining him well. Fourth elder, please punish him. So he's from the secular world. No wonder. Although Zhao Hongba didn't show it on his face, the dissatisfaction in his words was obvious. The local experts on Heaven's Stage Island were basically divided into two factions towards the cultivators from the secular world. One was compatible, and the other was repellent. This fourth elder obviously belonged to the latter, and he was the radical faction, advocating the banning of all the experts from the secular world. And this was the key reason why he opposed Lu Bianren's backer. Chapter 36-35. Yes, I will listen to fourth elder's instructions. Meng Jueguang was overjoyed and hurriedly responded. He had tried so hard to exchange the little spirit jade with Lin Yi in order to gain Zhao Yu's favor. And Zhao Yu was elder Zhao Hongba's grandson. Now it seemed that his efforts were not in vain. To be able to leave his name in Zhao Hongba's heart, it was enough to save him a few decades of hard work in the future. Happily receiving the praise, Meng Jueguang turned his head and frowned at Lin Yi. Junior brother Lin Yi, what are you still standing here for? Hurry up and go find Pavilion Master Lu. Do you really want to anger fourth elder? Lin Yi glanced at him and was about to speak when senior brother Bitter Guy gritted his teeth and rushed to help him out. Fourth elder, senior brother Meng. It's not that junior brother Lin doesn't want to go find Pavilion Master Lu, but today's public instruction day is a rare opportunity. As a newcomer, he really can't miss it. Please understand, fourth elder. Why don't you let me go find Pavilion Master Lu? Lin Yi looked at senior brother Bitter Guy gratefully. Standing up to speak for him at this time was a big risk. Zhao Hongba might vent his anger on him. For a low-level steward like senior brother Bitter Guy, This was not a joke. Who are you? Zhao Hongba looked at senior brother Bitter Guy. He had only heard of Meng Jueguang's name from his grandson Zhao Yu. Under normal circumstances, he would not pay attention to a small steward in the welcoming pavilion, let alone know the name of these people. Senior brother Bitter Guy took a deep breath and said, "Fourth elder, this disciple is called Ku Zhongla. I am also the steward in charge of the newcomers in Blue Cloud Pavilion." Ku Zhongla? Finding joy in hardship. This name is a bit interesting. Zhao Hongba laughed noncommittally. Then he said righteously, "Since you know that you are the steward, you should understand that your current task is to maintain order among the newcomers. How can you leave without permission and go out to find someone? Let this Linny go." Zhao Hongba thought about it and felt that even if he agreed to Su Lingchong's request, it wouldn't make sense to erase Lin Yi's right to ask questions. It would damage his image as the fourth elder of Blue Cloud Pavilion. So he said, "Don't worry, I will reserve your right to ask questions. Even if you come back late, I can make an exception and answer 3 questions for you." Zhao Hongba's words sounded as magnanimous as his name suggested. However, the significance of the Open Guidance Day, for rookies, was not just to answer his 3 questions. More importantly, he could listen to the elders answer other people's questions. Only when there was comparison could one gain experience. This was a very important lesson for rookies. This lesson was even worth 10 years of hard work for him. Once Linny agreed, it meant that he could still ask questions. However, it was impossible to hear the other newcomers' questions and answers. In a sense, such a loss was even greater than the 15 pieces of spiritual jade that Meng Jueguang had lost previously. The bitter senior apprentice originally wanted to insist, but he was stopped by Lin Yi's hand. This was because for Lin Yi, it was no longer necessary. As long as he could reserve the right to ask 3 questions, the rest was not a problem. "Thank you for your understanding, fourth elder. This disciple will set off now." Lin Yi cupped his hands towards Zhao Hongba and turned to leave. He. Meng Jueguang, who was at the side, raised his chin proudly at Lin Yi. The ridicule in his eyes was obvious. Even if it was Lin Yi, who was covered in thorns, in front of Zhao Hongba, the fourth elder, he would not be able to resist at all. Relying on the disparity in status and strength, he could easily kill you with just a few words. Moreover, you would not be able to speak at all. After 2 hours, Lu Bianren and Lin Yi finally rushed back to the welcome pavilion. At this time, the 3 elders had already finished teaching the newcomers from the 3 pavilions, and were all gathered in the main hall to exchange their training experiences. Lu Bianren and Lin Yi looked at each other, and their hearts suddenly thumped. This scene was obviously deliberately created by someone. Imagine, if it was in Songshan First High. Chu Pingzhan came to inspect the school, and all the school leaders, teachers and students were present. Then, under the watchful eyes of everyone, the only person who was late arrived, and what was even worse was that this person had already been rejected by the majority of the teachers and students in the school. What kind of feeling would they have at this time? If it was a normal person, their only thought at this time would probably be to quickly find a hole to hide in. But Lu Bianren did not. His expression did not change, and he directly walked towards the 3 elders in the middle with his head held high. Lin Yi praised Lu Shixiang as he stood on the side. Lu Shixiang looked as weak as his bitter Shixiang. The 3rd master of the welcoming pavilion had been turned into a mere figurehead by someone else. But this person's temperament and courage were far beyond a normal person's. The reason why Lu Bianren looked weak was because he was constantly retreating. When one's own strength was insufficient, choosing to retreat was far more sensible than choosing to resist, and it also required more courage. But in this crucial situation, he could not retreat anymore, because if he retreated now, it would not be a retreat, but a retreat. Lu Bianren knew that if he retreated even a little, what awaited him would be eternal damnation. Not only would he not be able to stay in the welcome pavilion, but he would also not be able to stay in the Blue Cloud Pavilion in the future. So, even if he knew that there was a storm in front of him, he could only move forward at this time, with his head held high. "Greetings to the 3 elders. Disciple Lu Bianren came late to welcome you. Please forgive me." Lu Bianren bowed and said. Lu Bianren bowed as he spoke, and he didn't mention the slightest reason, nor did he make any excuses. He was sincerely asking for forgiveness. Smart. Leni could not help but praise in his heart. At this time, if Lu Bianren talked about the reason why he was late, he would be at a disadvantage. Not to mention that Hu Yinfeng and the others would definitely push the blame away. These three high and mighty elders would not be interested in the reason why Lu Bianren was late. In their eyes, being absent on such an important day was Lu Bianren's fault. If he still wanted to find excuses, then he would be even more wrong, and even more guilty. But now, Lu Bianren did not say anything, but directly admitted his mistake and asked for forgiveness. In this way, even if the three elders were dissatisfied, they could not say anything. After all, he was only late once. If they were to hold on to this small matter and not let it go, then it would seem that they were too calculative, and that they were not magnanimous enough. Su Yuanzheng, who was in the middle, glanced at Zhao Hongba and did not say anything. After all, Lu Bianren was a member of the Blue Cloud Pavilion. It was better to let Zhao Hongba, the internal elder, deal with him. It could also be considered as giving him face. Chapter 36:36. However, it did not mean that the matter was over just like that. He was going to settle the score later. Lu Bianren smiled bitterly and retreated to the side. If Zhao Hongba had reprimanded him severely, nothing would have happened afterward. After all, scolding his own child in front of outsiders was actually shielding him. But now, this fourth elder did not say anything, only saying that they would talk about it in the future. Then, when he returned to the Clear Cloud Pavilion, maybe he would have to teach Huang Xiaolong a lesson. Maybe not long after, he wouldn't even be able to hold the title of Welcoming Pavilion's third Pavilion Lord. Not only was Lu Bianren aware of this, but Pavilion Master Hu Yinfeng and Deputy Pavilion Master Feng Song also revealed a smug smile. This was a trap they had set up together, and this was the effect they wanted. After this episode, the public guidance day had come to an end. Everyone thought that they could disperse, but unexpectedly, Leni stood up and walked in front of the three elders. Elder Zhao, I haven't asked my 3 questions. Does the elder's previous promise still count? Everyone was stunned, and then all eyes fell on Lin Yi. Everyone's eyes were full of playfulness and curiosity. Although this Lin Yi was the most useless new disciple in Clear Cloud Pavilion, because of all the things that had happened before, especially the conflict between him and Su Lingchong, young Master Su, Lin Yi's reputation among the new disciples was extremely high. Even Kong Xiaoming, who was Su Lingchong's direct follower, could not compare to him. Moreover, it was said that this person was not weak. He could defeat a heaven stage great perfection expert in one move. This kind of strength was not inferior to those old men in the mysterious pavilion. If he were to ask questions, there should be a lot of reference value. Zhao Hongba glanced at Lin Yi. He naturally would not deny this kind of thing. He nodded and said, "Of course it counts. You can ask now." Lin Yi looked around. Under normal circumstances, the rookies of the 3 pavilions would ask questions separately. But now, all the rookies of the 3 pavilions were present, and even the big shots like Su Yuanzheng were present. Facing such a big scene, the timid ordinary people would probably tremble in fear, and not be able to speak fluently. However, Lin Yi didn't take it seriously at all. He immediately asked, "Disciple is a newcomer from the secular world. Dare I ask, Elder, after we go to the Heaven Stage Island, can the unconscious inheritors be treated? How do we treat them?" Lin Yi had asked Senior Brother Kubai about this before. But Senior Brother Kubai was just a low-level steward after all. At his level, he would at most know a little about this kind of thing. Moreover, he could not explain how to save the inheritor, so he could only rely on Lin Yi's own speculation. However, what Senior Brother Bitter didn't know, these high and mighty elders definitely knew. Strength and status determined that they could grasp information that ordinary people could never touch. So, taking advantage of this great opportunity, Lin Yi naturally wanted to get to the bottom of it. And this was also the reason why he had reserved the right to ask questions. Zhao Hongba couldn't help but be slightly stunned when he heard this, and he had a slightly surprised expression. Because to 99% of the newcomers, such an opportunity that could only be chanced upon by luck would surely ask some questions that were of utmost importance in the process of cultivation, and they would absolutely not ask about miscellaneous matters. In the eyes of ordinary people, this was simply a waste of resources. However, the public instruction day had never stipulated that questions related to cultivation had to be asked. And because of Su Lingchong's greeting, Zhao Hongba was more than happy to let Lin Yi waste the opportunity himself. After all, this was in front of everyone's watchful eyes. Even if he wanted to target Lin Yi, he couldn't just speak irresponsibly. Otherwise, it would be a fatal blow to others. The reason why those inheritors fainted was because their spiritual sense was damaged during the teleportation process, and they became mindless vegetables. As for how to treat them, as far as I know, only one person has done such a thing before. And that was miracle Dr. Dan St. Zhang Liju. Many years ago, he had treated his wife, Master Bing and Master Shui, Zhao Hongba replied. Although he was part of the radical faction that strongly advocated the banning of the common world practitioners, he, like everyone else, respected a legendary figure like Zhang Liju. However, this didn't stop him from persevering. After all, Zhang Liju was an extremely rare case. Most of the practitioners that came from the common world were weak, and their personalities were evil. They only knew how to waste resources without contributing anything. To Sky Class Island, they were pests with no benefits at all, and as far as he was concerned, they should be banned. As expected, he had to go find Zhang Liju. Zhao Hongba's answer confirmed Lin Yi's speculation, and he couldn't help but sigh in relief. No matter what, since there was a successful treatment, there was hope. Then how can I, your disciple, meet Master Zhang Liju? Lin Yi continued to ask. I heard that Master Zhang Liju lives in Middle Island, and as long as you become an inner disciple of one of the 3 pavilions, you will have the chance to go to Middle Island to do missions. However, a master like Master Zhang Liju has always been elusive, and even if you go to Middle Island, the chance of meeting him is almost 0. But other than that, there is another chance, and that is to enter the 5 Elements sect created by Master Zhang Liju during the Middle Island tournament. That might increase the chance of meeting him, Zhao Hongba explained in detail, and seeing that Lin Yi was about to ask more, he cut him off with a smile that wasn't a smile. Alright, this is already the 3rd question. Is that enough? That was it. The newbies who were watching from the sidelines immediately went into an uproar. They were hoping to hear something useful, but in the end, Lin Yi didn't even ask a single question related to training. The 3 questions were all gossip, and it didn't benefit them at all. This time, even Lin Yi himself was a little stunned. After all, this was the guidance day, and in order to better help the newbies, the elders would usually try their best to answer the newbies' questions. They would even break the rules and ask a few more questions, and this Zhao Hongba, on the other hand, broke the same question into 3. It was rare to see the 4th elder of Blue Cloud Pavilion being stingy like this. This guy is an idiot. This is such a great opportunity, and he actually asked such a stupid question. He's really hopeless. Su Lingchong, Meng Jueguang, and the others couldn't help but laugh out loud. They had been trying to think of ways to stop Zhao Hongba from answering Lin Yi's questions, and in the end, Zhao Hongba still answered them, because he cared about his image. They didn't expect that Lin Yi would ask such a stupid question, and they wasted the opportunity. Chapter 36-37. Kong Ming Ming took the opportunity to mock him. This Lin Yi was an infatuated person when he was in the secular world, always with those inheritors. I didn't think that he would still be thinking about them after coming to Heavenly Island. What a hero's grave, wasting such a good opportunity. TSK, even I feel that it's a pity, wahahaha. Zhong Pingliang also laughed, but he wasn't laughing at Lin Yi, but at Kong Ming Ming and the others. He was clearly an idiot, but he was laughing at Boss Lin Yi, killing his way up from the bottom of the secular world. Boss Lin Yi's training talent was absolutely unprecedented, Did he even need to ask others about this? Was he joking? He'd been tricked by Zhao Hongba. But at least he'd gotten the information he needed. He'd achieved his goal. But he still put on a dejected look on his face. That's 3 questions already. I thought this was the first one. Heh, you can't even tell 1 from 3. I think you're the 2 in the middle. Kong Mingming saw this, and was even more pleased. It was simply satisfying to see his nemesis Lin Yi suffer. The others around him laughed, pointing at Lin Yi and mocking him unscrupulously. Seeing this, Su Yuanzheng, who was standing in the middle, frowned, but didn't stop the crowd from laughing. Instead, he looked at Lin Yi and said, "This disciple can't do it, he's too stupid. This is a rare opportunity to not ask about training, but ask about useless gossip. It's completely the opposite of the original intention of the guidance day. Since he's so lazy, don't give him so many training resources in the future. Give them to the more ambitious disciples." As soon as he said this, everyone looked at Lin Yi with even more schadenfreude. Lu Bianren, Ku Bai, and the others were all worried for Lin Yi. Su Yuanzheng was one of the big shots in the Elders Guild. He was just casually commenting here. Those were words of gold and jade, and they were no different from imperial edicts. In this way, Lin Yi's days in the Welcome Pavilion would be even more difficult. As expected, Hu Yinfeng hurriedly nodded and echoed, "Third Elder, you're right. I also think that some newcomers don't want to make progress. We should give this part of the cultivation resources to others, so that we can better motivate the newcomers and make contributions to our North Island sections." And that's a good idea. Su Yuanjing nodded with approval. Meng Jueguang, who was in the crowd, was elated to hear this. In that case, it would be even more justifiable for him to mess with Lin Yi in the future. This was doing things according to Elder Su Yuanjing's intentions. Who dared to say half a word of disagreement? As for Lin Yi, although he didn't care about the cultivation resources allocated by the Welcome Pavilion, because he had the space of the Jade Pendant, he still had to pretend to be pitiful and helpless at the moment. After all, even the most arrogant newcomer would inevitably feel desperate in front of Su Yuanjing's words. If Lin Yi still remained unmoved, it would be easy to be suspected. And the more pitiful Lin Yi was, the more complacent he was. Su Lingchong and the others were naturally more complacent. With Su Yuanjing's last fatal comment to end, all the plans today could be said to be a perfect success. From then on, the entire Welcome Pavilion would be Lin Yi's enemy. This idiot was waiting to suffer a lot. After the incident with Lin Yi, the public guidance day finally officially ended. Hu Yinfeng and the others respectfully saw the 3 elders off, and the other newcomers left, talking and laughing. And this topic naturally could not be separated from Lin Yi, the unlucky guy who became the focus at the end. Junior brother Lin Yusai, Lu Bianren, senior brother Ku Bai, Xiao Ran, and Xiao Honkai surrounded Lin Yi. All of them looked worried, and wanted to say something but stopped. Even if they felt injustice for Lin Yi, things had already come to this. Even if they wanted to help Lin Yi, there was nothing they could do. After all, the other party was a big shot in the Elders Guild. Small fries like them could be easily crushed with just a word from the other party. They had no power to resist at all. Seeing that the others had pretty much dispersed, only then did Lin Yi put away the deliberately feigned helpless expression and said with a faint smile, "Actually, everyone doesn't need to worry about me. Even if they target me, it's at most deducting my cultivation resources. People like Pavilion Master Hu Yinfeng and the others can't directly find me for a battle, right? As for this bit of cultivation resources, I naturally have ways to make up for it through other channels. So there's nothing to worry about." Everyone exchanged glances. Seeing that Lin Yi himself, the person involved, looked as if nothing had happened. If the people around him were still so solemn, it would be a little like the eunuchs being anxious when the emperor was not anxious. Hoo-hoo, junior brother Lin is indeed a broad-minded person. Admirable. In comparison, although I, senior brother, think that my mental state is pretty good, compared to junior brother Lin, I'm still inferior. Really ashamed, Lu Bianren said with a smile. Only then did everyone react. Currently, the one in an awkward situation was not just Lin Yi. To a certain extent, Lu Bianren's current situation was even more precarious than Lin Yi's. After all, no matter how difficult Lin Yi's situation was, at least he still had the opportunity to deal with it when it came. But Lu Bianren might not even have this opportunity. Senior brother Lu, you should be fine, right? After all, Elder Zhao didn't say anything just now, right? The bitter senior brother could not help but say with hope. Although Lu Bianren had long been made a mere figurehead by Hu Yunfeng and the rest, no matter what, he was still a third pavilion master, and a pillar of support for them. Even if he did not have any power in his hands, and might not be able to help many times, at least he could always provide some experience and insights, pointing out the right path for the few people. Lu Bianren shook his head helplessly and said, "If it were other elders, perhaps there might still be a little bit of luck. But the other party is Elder Zhao. With his relationship with that backer of ours, do you think that he will let me off? If that backer of ours is still in Blue Cloud Pavilion, there might be a little possibility of protecting me. Unfortunately, he has long gone to the outer islands to carry out a mission, and there's no news at all." That backer. Lin Yi's heart moved when he heard that. It was not strange for people like Lu Bianren and the bitter senior brother to have a backer in Blue Cloud Pavilion. But listening to the meaning of Lu Bianren's words, could it be that their backer could actually contend with Xiao Hongba, the fourth elder of Blue Cloud Pavilion? Chapter 36-38. Senior brother Ku let out a long sigh. The source of their current embarrassing situation wasn't that they didn't have a backer, but that their backer had left, and there was no news of him after he left. Seeing him so depressed, Lu Bianren comforted him with a smile. "Actually, it's not a big deal. Even if Elder Zhao wants to target me, he will at most remove me from the position of third pavilion master of Welcome Pavilion, which only exists in name. After all, our elder is only temporarily carrying out a mission. It's not like he'll never come back, so he won't dare to go too far. Moreover, for me now, a change of environment may be a completely different world, which may not necessarily be a bad thing." Since even Lu Bianren himself said so, senior brother Ku and Lin Yi naturally couldn't say anything more, so they could only nod. Lu Bianren paused and said, "Actually, if I'm transferred away, I'm not worried about junior brother Lin. Although it's the first time I've met junior brother Xiao and junior brother Qiao, I can see that they are steady people, so I'm not worried. The only person I'm worried about is you, junior brother Ku." "Me? Worried about what?" Senior brother Ku was surprised. In terms of ability and temperament, although he admitted that he couldn't compare to Lin Yi, compared to Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai, there shouldn't be much difference, right? After all, he was a steward senior brother in the early stage of foundation establishment. Lu Bianren shook his head, saying in a serious tone, "If I'm transferred away, and another person is transferred from our Clear Cloud Pavilion to be the third pavilion lord, that's not a big deal. But what if Meng Jueguang's side wants to fight for this position? What will you do?" This, senior brother Ku suddenly didn't know what to say. Meng Jueguang was now only a steward senior brother, but he had already targeted them in all kinds of ways, both in the open and in the dark. Especially Lin Yi, who was targeted the most. If he sat in the position of third pavilion master, wouldn't that be even worse? Would he still be alive then? "Junior brother Ku, you are gentle and generous. This is what I admire the most about you, but sometimes, this is also your biggest weakness," Lu Bianren said sternly. "If things really come to that, even if it's for the sake of the few junior brothers here, you have to stand up and fight with Meng Jueguang. Even if you lose in the end, you can't let him look down on you. At the very least, you can't let him do whatever he wants." If it weren't for Lu Bianren's words, senior brother Bitter would have definitely retreated when faced with that kind of situation. But now, he at least understood one thing. Once he retreated, he would definitely die. Even Lin Yi and the others behind him would be consigned to eternal damnation. "I know, senior brother Lu, don't worry. I will take care of a few of my junior brothers." Senior brother Bitter nodded heavily. "All right, Lu Bianren patted senior brother Bitter's shoulder, then turned to Lin Yi and said, Junior brother Lin, although your situation is awkward now, I'm not worried. But I'm not worried. When Grandmaster Zhang Liju first came to Heaven Class Island, he was also surrounded by enemies, and was in a difficult situation. But these enemies eventually became the Miracle Dr. Dan's name. So I look forward to your performance. Then please wait and see, senior brother Lu. Lin Yi smiled slightly. He was full of confidence and calmness. After that, Lu Bianren uncharacteristically chattered a lot with them. He already had a premonition that his days in the welcoming pavilion were numbered. If he could give some advice at this time, for Lin Yi and the others, perhaps they would have more confidence when facing people like Meng Jueguang in the future. This was the only thing he could do now. After saying goodbye to Lu Bianren and senior brother Bitter, Lin Yi and the others returned to the cave together. After informing Lin Yi, Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai couldn't wait to return to their own cave to train. The two of them had just won 15 pieces of spiritual jade from Meng Jueguang yesterday, and today they listened to Zhao Hongba's advice. At this time, their enthusiasm for training was very high. If they took advantage of this momentum and worked hard for a few months, they might be able to successfully build their foundation. To be honest, although Zhao Hongba was a little lacking in magnanimity, he was the fourth elder of Blue Cloud Pavilion after all. Whether it was strength or knowledge, he was the best of all the practitioners in the North Island. Listening to his lecture was really better than studying for 10 years. Senior brother Bitter and Xiao Ran both felt sorry for Lin Yi for missing the opportunity to listen to other people's questions and answers. So on the way back, these people talked one after another, and almost repeated all the advice Zhao Hongba gave to the newcomers of Blue Cloud Pavilion. After listening to them, Lin Yi learned something, but he didn't feel enlightened. After all, these newcomers were below the peak of heaven stage, and most of the questions they asked were related to how to break through to the foundation realm. But Lin Yi was already a master in the early stage of the foundation realm, so these instructions were not of great practical use to him. They could only absorb some experience from the ideas and use it as a reference for future training. After watching Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai leave, Lin Yi turned around and was about to enter his cave, but suddenly he was stopped by someone. He turned around and saw that it was Li Zhengming. Why is this guy looking for me? Lin Yi was secretly surprised. In his opinion, Li Zhengming was quite a strange person. Putting aside the fact that he deliberately hid his strength, he was the first person besides Meng Tong to take the initiative to join Meng Jueguang. Logically speaking, he should be a lackey. However, from his previous performance, not only was he not a lackey, but he was also very low-key. Most of the time, people didn't even remember that there was such a guy, which was very puzzling. Brother Lin Yi, I have something to talk to you about. Is it convenient? Li Zhengming's expression was uncertain, and he seemed to be in a dilemma. What is it? Lin Yi stopped and thought about it carefully. Li Zhengming didn't offend him much. Even when he occupied his mine in the 7th mine, it must have been under the orders of Meng Jueguang. Moreover, in the end, it turned out that he did Lin Yi a big favor, so there was nothing to hate. Li Zhengming hesitated for a moment and said, Can we talk in your cave? Sure. Lin Yi readily agreed. The cave was actually a very secret private space for cultivators. The things stored in it might expose some unspeakable secrets. However, all of Lin Yi's things were piled up in the space of the jade pendant, so he naturally didn't have to worry about this. After the two entered the cave, Li Zhengming said, I actually have a presumptuous request this time. I hope to exchange a few pieces of spiritual jades with you. Exchange for spiritual jades? Lin Yi was slightly stunned. He looked very surprised on the surface, but in his heart, he was secretly happy. Chapter 36-39. There was no need to think too much about this. Other than Meng Jueguang and Meng Tong, who else would come looking for him to exchange for spiritual jades for no reason? Of course, for Lin Yi, the more traps there were, the better. He could not wait for Meng Jueguang and his gang to brazenly cheat him. It would be best if each of them cheated him of 100 pieces. That way, he would not have to worry about how to earn spiritual jades. Lin Yi's guess was right. The mastermind behind this incident was Meng Jueguang. And the source of this incident was a few days ago. When Meng Tong was bragging to the other newcomers, he accidentally revealed that Lin Yi had been cheated out of good jades by them using useless jades. As a result, Lin Yi became the laughingstock of the crowd. It also made the newcomers unknowingly target him. Just by casually using a few worthless pieces of useless jades, they could exchange for a good piece of spiritual jades. With such a living bodhisattva by their side, they should hurry up and pay him a visit to get some benefits. Wouldn't they be condemned by the heavens and the earth? Originally, the newcomers only had one piece of the spirit jade that the welcoming pavilion had given them, and Lin Yi's had been scammed away by Meng Jueguang a long time ago. He didn't have anything else to talk about, and so even if the newcomers had the idea, they could only keep it to themselves. But it was different now. Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai had just won 15 pieces of spiritual jades from Meng Jueguang yesterday. According to normal logic, the spiritual jades of the two underlings would naturally fall into the hands of the boss, Lin Yi. So overnight, the hearts of the newcomers in the Blue Cloud Pavilion began to stir. Everyone was thinking of using their useless jades to exchange for the good jades in Lin Yi's hands. But Lin Yi wasn't an idiot after all. If he couldn't think of a good reason, then he wouldn't be able to. No matter how anxious these rookies were, they did not know what to do in a short period of time. Although it could be said that Lin Yi's brain was not very good, and he had been tricked by Meng Jueguang and Meng Tong with the useless jade, he was still a ruthless person who could defeat Meng Tong in one move. These rookies had to admit that they could not afford to offend this demon. If he didn't think it through beforehand and rashly lied to him, it would be hard to say what the consequences would be if he found out. He might even be beaten half to death by him. However, there was clearly a piece of fresh meat placed in front of them, but they could not eat it. The feelings of the rookies were like 100 claws scratching at their hearts. Finally, they could not hold it in any longer. Finally, someone asked Meng Jueguang for help. If there was a first, there would be a second. Things always changed in the end. As a result, all the other rookies in Blue Cloud Pavilion ran to Meng Jueguang to express their loyalty. And this scene happened at the end of today's tutoring day, when Liu Bianren was giving instructions to Lin Yi and the others. With regards to this, Meng Jueguang was naturally overjoyed. He had been looking forward to this scene for a long time. Faced with the rookies' request for help, he naturally could not disappoint them. Not only did he provide everyone with a few pieces of useless jade, he even gave them a very detailed reason. Naturally, Li Zhengming, who was the first person other than Meng Tong to rely on him, became the best candidate to test the feasibility of this plan. Hence, there was the scene of Li Zhengming coming to him. How do you exchange for spirit jades? Aren't spirit jades the same? What's there to exchange for? Lin Yi pretended to be surprised. Although he did not know the details behind the scenes, he had more or less guessed it. Now was the time when he was in urgent need of spirit jades. Since the other party had taken the initiative to deliver spirit jades to him, there was no reason for him to reject them. However, he still had to cooperate with them, or else he would be suspected. Li Zhengming pondered for a moment and asked, "The 15 pieces of spirit jades that Senior Meng lost to you yesterday, are they in your hands? Is there a problem with that?" Lin Yi did not answer directly, but asked in a non-committal manner. Li Zhengming thought that Lin Yi had tacitly agreed, so he organized his words and said, "It's like this. The bag of spirit jades that Senior Meng gave you was temporarily stored in his public funds. In a moment of desperation, he did not notice and mixed it up. Originally, it was not impossible for him to use his personal spirit jades to exchange for it. But Brother Lin Yi, you also know that there are different grades of good spirit jades. The problem is that this batch of public funds is of high quality. Senior Meng would not be able to find so much good spirit jades in such a short time." At this point, Li Zhengming looked at Lin Yi. Seeing that he was not moved, he continued, "Once the accounts are audited and the quality is found to be different, Senior Meng will inevitably be punished. As a new disciple, I can't just stand by and watch, so This set of words was naturally thought up by Meng Jueguang himself. At first glance, it sounded reasonable, and no one could find any obvious loopholes. Moreover, this good spirit jades was real, but this good spirit jades belonged to Meng Jueguang. So you want me to exchange these spirit jades for Meng Xixiang's favor? Lin Yi cooperated and continued the conversation. Li Zhengming nodded repeatedly. That's right. So I don't know if brother Lin Yi is willing to part with it? Lin Yi could not help but laugh. He deliberately put on a gloating expression and said, although I can understand what you are saying, from the beginning to the end, it is Senior Meng's own business. He made a mistake, so naturally he will be punished. What does it have to do with me? Moreover, you yourself said that this is good spirit jades. Why would I exchange it with you for ordinary spirit jades? Do you think I am an idiot? Brother Lin Yi, you have misunderstood. I also know that this is a little difficult for you, so I will not let you suffer a loss. I will use 2 good spirit jades to exchange for one of your good spirit jades. How about that? Li Zhengming already knew that Lin Yi would not easily agree, so he offered a tempting price. About this, Lin Yi purposely pretended to be interested, but still shook his head. Your 2 good spirit jades and my 1 good spirit jades, although the value of the 2 is about the same, to me there is still not much benefit. Don't forget that Senior Meng has targeted me many times before. Since there is no obvious benefit, why should I help him? Why don't you give me a reason? Hearing this, Li Zhengming hesitated for a moment, then gritted his teeth and said, all right then, 3 spirit jades for 1. Brother Lin Yi should be satisfied now. Let's say that your spirit jades are worth the same as 2 good spirit jades. 3 spirit jades for 1. You have definitely made a profit. Hee, this guy is also a master of acting. Lin Yi could not help but laugh in his heart. After thinking for a moment, he finally nodded and said, all right then, deal. Chapter 3640. However, this time was different from the last time. Last time, Meng Jueguang's excuse was to exchange small spiritual jades for jade carvings. Therefore, Lin Yi could raise the price unscrupulously under the guise of a rare commodity. Moreover, the other party was willing to cooperate in order to cheat him. One was willing to take the hit, and the other was willing to take the hit. There was nothing much to say. However, this time, the transaction with Li Zhengming did not have such an excuse. It was a completely normal exchange of spiritual jades. After all, from a normal person's point of view, exchanging 1 high-grade jade for 3 normal jades was not a loss for Lin Yi. If he asked for more, people would suspect that Lin Yi had already discovered that these were useless jades. As for discovering that these ordinary good jades were useless after the transaction, that was another matter altogether. Taking a step back, for a newcomer like Li Zhengming, it was not realistic to ask for dozens of jades for 1 jade. Even if Lin Yi knew that he was asking for less, he could only accept it this time. Give these people a little benefit first, then more people would send jade to your door. Only by casting a long line could you catch a big fish. After all, for Lin Yi, as long as he had the space of the jade pendant, any useless jades would become good jades in his hands. 25 for 1 was fine. 3 for 1 was fine too. It was a profit without any loss. After this transaction, Lin Yi could already foresee that in the future, the idiot halo on him would become stronger and stronger. When this recognition was deeply rooted in people's hearts, people would definitely come to him to exchange spiritual jades and take advantage of him. What they didn't know was that under the cover of this idiot aura, Lin Yi was happily making a fortune. Seeing Li Zhengming take out 6 spiritual jades, Lin Yi was slightly stunned. You want to exchange for 2? That's right. You can check carefully, Li Zhengming said with a deep meaning. These words made Lin Yi feel a little strange. If he didn't want to play along, he wouldn't be able to. Li Zhengming's words revealed 2 very obvious flaws. Firstly, as a newcomer, in a situation where everyone else only had 1 piece of spiritual jade, he suddenly took out 6 pieces. Wasn't he afraid of arousing Lin Yi's suspicions? Secondly, if it were someone else in Li Zhengming's position, seeing that Lin Yi had agreed to the deal, they would have accepted the spiritual jades and left immediately. Why would he specifically remind Lin Yi to check carefully? Was he not afraid that Lin Yi would really do it in front of him, and then find out that these were all waste jade? He obviously didn't look like such a stupid person, but he still revealed such an obvious flaw. This guy was really a strange person. Lin Yi felt strange, but he didn't care. After all, what he wanted was waste jade. If he really had to check according to the other party's words, then this show couldn't go on. He immediately exchanged the spiritual jades in his hand, with a look of surprise as if he had gained a big bargain, for fear that Li Zhengming would go back on his words. He put away the 6 pieces of waste jade and said, "That's it." Li Zhengming looked at Lin Yi with some surprise, but he didn't say much. After a greeting, he put away the spiritual jades and left. Coming out of Lin Yi's cave house number 14, Li Zhengming didn't directly return to his own cave house, but turned and entered the neighboring cave house number 15. At this time, not only Meng Tong, the owner of the cave house, but even Meng Jueguang was here. It was to know Lin Yi's reaction as soon as possible. Seeing Li Zhengming come in, Meng Tong immediately asked impatiently, "Did you get the spiritual jades? Let me see." Li Zhengming looked at Meng Jueguang next to him. Although he didn't speak, the urgency between his eyebrows clearly showed that this was the problem he was most concerned about at this moment. These two people only wanted to collect the spiritual jades, but they didn't care at all whether they were beaten up or not. In an instant, Li Zhengming suddenly felt very cold. In fact, when Meng Jueguang first proposed this idea, the person who originally planned to test Lin Yi was not him, but Meng Tong. But Meng Tong found an excuse to push it away, and put this task on Li Zhengming's head. Although it was said that he gave a good opportunity to take advantage of Lin Yi to Li Zhengming was very clear that Meng Tong was obviously afraid of being beaten up, so he pushed him out as a sacrifice. No heaven stage expert was a real fool. According to Meng Jueguang, Lin Yi had already collected 2 piles of useless jades. If it was any normal person, they would have already reacted. Letting a person like Lin Yi repeatedly step into the same pit 3 times. This kind of thing was too unrealistic no matter how you think about it. Although Meng Jueguang provided a seemingly very reasonable excuse, there was a very important premise. That was, Lin Yi had never found the useless jades that he had collected before. Frankly speaking, Lin Yi must be a complete idiot. But any normal person would know that the success of this test was actually very small. The reason why they still did this test was just a fluke driven by benefits. Once the test failed, the possibility of Lin Yi going crazy was almost 100%. At that time, the person who was sent to test him could be imagined what would happen to him. Being beaten half to death would be considered a good thing, and he might even lose his life there. Moreover, even if he was beaten to death, according to the rules of the Heaven Stage North Island, it would be in vain, because the Heaven Stage North Island prohibited waste jades from being circulated as good jades in the market. You violated the rules first, so you deserve to be beaten to death. Even if Meng Tong, who was not very smart, could think of this kind of thing, how could Li Zhengming not think of it? But Meng Tong pushed him forward, and Meng Jueguang also nodded. No matter how unwilling he was, he could only bite the bullet and do it. There was no other way after all, he was the younger brother. But even if he was the younger brother, after the test came back, he did not care about his safety at all, and directly reached out to him for the spirit jades. This was not treating him as a human being. Li Zhengming could not help but be in a trance. Was it necessary to continue to rely on this kind of backing? Say something? Did you get the spirit jades or not? What are you doing here like an idiot? Did Lin Yi beat you silly? Meng Jueguang saw that Li Zhengming did not answer, and could not help but frown and scold. Oh, it worked. That Lin Yi guy's an idiot. He didn't even check the jade, and let me trade 6 pieces of trash jade for 2 good ones. He's acting like he's the one who got the best deal. What an idiot. Li Zhengming hurriedly replied after he came to his senses. He took out the 2 pieces of spiritual jades and excused himself. I'm just too happy. I'm having too much fun, and forgetting about my duties. Chapter 3641. Using 6 pieces of useless jade to exchange for 2 pieces of useless jade from Lin Yi. This was a big joke. However, Meng Jueguang quickly came to a conclusion. The 2 pieces of spiritual jades were abnormally full of spiritual energy. They were indeed top-notch jades. It seems like that guy is the same as what Kong Ming and Zhong Pingyang said before. He never uses spiritual jades to cultivate, so he still doesn't know that we tricked him with useless jades. Maybe he's still complacent and thinks that he's rich. He's really stupid to the extreme. Meng Jueguang laughed proudly and looked at Li Zhengming. You did a good job. I'll reward you with one of these spiritual jades and give the other to Meng Tong. Li Zhengming's heart sank. According to the previous agreement, no matter who took the useless jades to Lin Yi, all the spiritual jades would belong to that person. But now, Meng Jueguang reduced it by half with just one sentence. This bias was too unreasonable. However, people had to lower their heads when they were under someone else's roof. Li Zhengming knew that if he wanted to continue living here, he had to find a good backer. For now, the newcomers of Blue Cloud Pavilion only had 2 choices. One was Meng Jueguang, the other was Lin Yi, or Lu Bianren and the bitter guy. Before, Li Zhengming thought that Lin Yi was hiding something. But after the test just now, especially when he deliberately hinted, Lin Yi didn't have any reaction at all. He actually foolishly accepted the pile of useless jades. This really surprised him. He suddenly felt that this guy was not reliable at all. Plus, Lu Bianren was the biggest supporter of Lin Yi's group, and it seemed like he was very powerful. As the 3rd pavilion master, no matter how bad he would still have a place in the welcome pavilion. However, that was not the case. Although this group of people seemed powerful, they were actually not very reliable. In comparison, although Meng Jueguang's performance had disappointed him, at least in the welcome pavilion, in front of the newcomers of the Blue Cloud Pavilion, he could be considered a big tree. Only by leaning against a big tree could one enjoy shade. Only then could he gradually realize the obsession in his heart. Thank you, senior brother Meng. Although Li Zhengming was unhappy, he still pretended to be flattered. On the other hand, Meng Tong didn't say anything about getting a good piece of jade for free. Instead, he muttered unwillingly, since 9th cousin said so. I'll let you have a piece cheaper. It was originally mine. It's just that I gave you a good opportunity to test the waters. And that's why you've taken advantage of me for no reason. You must be very happy, right? Wahahaha. Li Zhengming couldn't help but roll his eyes speechlessly, hiding when he saw trouble, and taking advantage when he saw an advantage. How could a person be shameless to this extent? Previously, when I asked this guy to test the waters, he hid very quickly. I didn't expect that he would pretend to be a big-tail wolf at this time. If it wasn't because he was worried about Meng Jueguang's face. If it wasn't because he wanted to hide his heaven stage great perfection strength. Li Zhengming couldn't wait to teach this bastard a lesson. But now he could only choose to endure. Alright Meng Tong. Don't be so happy. Everyone gets one piece. The same goes for the others. With regards to Li Zhengming's current psychological activity, Meng Jueguang didn't notice at all, and didn't care at all. But Meng Tong's stupid behavior made him a little unhappy. He frowned and ordered. You two can tell the others about the success of the test tomorrow. Since Lin Yi hasn't realized it until now, he probably won't realize it in the future. Arrange for them to look for Lin Yi one by one to exchange for spiritual jades. Since they've already joined my sect, I naturally have to give them some benefits. I want to make Lin Yi spit out all the 15 pieces of good jades in his hands. Alright. Meng Tong replied in high spirits. Being able to see Lin Yi being cheated over and over again was really satisfying. Li Zhengming echoed from the side. Since Lin Yi was useless and couldn't even see through such an obvious hint, then he should just do what he had to do next. He couldn't make Meng Jueguang suspicious because of such an irrelevant guy. He wouldn't do such a stupid thing. In the next few days, Lin Yi went to the number 10 mine to mine as usual and returned to the cave residence to cultivate at night. But what was different from before was that every time he returned at night, there would always be someone waiting for him at the entrance of the cave residence. They were all newcomers of Blue Cloud Pavilion. Naturally, The purpose of waiting for Lin Yi was the same as Li Zhengming, to look for Lin Yi to exchange for spiritual jades. Lin Yi was happy to see this happen. If someone came to him to exchange for spiritual jades, then he would exchange. With Li Zhengming as the precedent, the exchange rate was always 3-1. In just a few days, including the 2 pieces he gave to Li Zhengming, Lin Yi had exchanged for a total of 15 pieces of spiritual jades, earning a net profit of 30 pieces. But after this, although Lin Yi's idiot halo became more and more famous through word of mouth among the newcomers, so much so that even the newcomers from the other 2 pavilions had heard of it, not a single newcomer came to him to exchange for spiritual jades. It wasn't because they found their conscience, but because everyone knew that Lin Yi didn't have any good jades on hand. If they went to look for him to exchange, even if they came up with an impeccable reason, they would only be able to exchange for a pile of useless jades. Naturally, these smart people wouldn't do such a stupid thing. Lin Yi looked at the additional 30 pieces of spiritual jades in his jade pendant space. He felt gratified, but at the same time, he couldn't help but feel pity. If he wanted those smart people to continue using the same old trick to give him useless jades, then he had to let them know that he had good jades on hand. But this required an open and above-board reason, just like this time when Meng Jueguang lost 15 pieces of good jades. Otherwise, even if Lin Yi took out good jades himself, he wouldn't be able to explain the source. But this kind of opportunity wasn't easy to come by, so he had to wait patiently. After counting, Lin Yi now had more than 80 pieces of spiritual jades on hand. Although it was a lot for ordinary people, for Lin Yi, who wanted to save 1,000 spiritual jades before the inner streets opening day next month, it was still a drop in the bucket. Fortunately, senior brother Bitter still had 300 to 400 pieces of spiritual jades on hand. In addition, Lin Yi now had at least 400 spiritual jades on hand. This way, he had already made up for a small part of the gap. Moreover, he still had plenty of time. Otherwise, Lin Yi could only take the risk and do something risky. Chapter 3642. Even though Lin Yi still did not know the specifics of this ghostly thing, after all his previous encounters, his intuition told him that this ghostly thing's background was definitely not small. Something that even he was moved by was naturally not a small matter. Moreover, as the saying goes, treasures have spirits. Every heavenly treasure was waiting for its fated person. This was a chance that belonged to everyone. Even though Lin Yi had not been able to find out the true use of the star ink stone from the ghostly thing's mouth, the throbbing of his heart at that time was not fake. He could clearly feel the mysterious connection between himself and this star ink stone. It could be seen that after getting his hands on it, there would definitely be an unexpected surprise waiting for him. However, while Lin Yi was looking forward to the star ink stone, in the cave of an inner disciple of the Soaring Sky Pavilion 100 miles away from him, there was someone who was even more obsessed with that unattractive stone than he was. He could not even rest during the day or sleep at night because of it. If Lin Yi was present, he would definitely be shocked and vigilant. This was because this person was the inner disciple of the Soaring Sky Pavilion he had met at the Hong Merchant Guild. His name was Yuzha. Compared to the other inner disciples of the Soaring Sky Pavilion, although Yuzha could barely be considered a second-generation cultivator, his background was far less profound than that of a young master like Su Lingchong. In the Soaring Sky Pavilion, if one did not have a powerful background, then one must have great strength. Otherwise, one could only be bullied by others and never have a chance to stand out. Therefore, Yuzha had always been very diligent. Apart from his daily training, the place he went to the library the most was the library. As long as he paid a token amount of spirit jade, he could look up tens of thousands of ancient books every month. This was a treatment unique to the inner disciples of the Soaring Sky Pavilion. As for the inner disciples of the other 2 pavilions, if they wanted to enter the library, they would have to pay a price that was not a small amount of spirit jade. The price they had to pay to enter the library was definitely painful. There was no other reason other than that this library was built on the territory of the Soaring Sky Pavilion. There was no other reason than the fact that the library pavilion was built on the territory of the Soaring Sky Pavilion. As an inner sect disciple of the Soaring Sky Pavilion, who did not have a strong background, Yuzha knew that if he wanted to stand out, it was not enough to just rely on diligent cultivation. He had to have some kind of unexpected fortuitous encounter, and fortuitous encounter opportunity. They were often hidden in these ancient books. In order to be able to more easily access these ancient books, Yuzha, as a high and mighty inner sect disciple of the Soaring Sky Pavilion, even volunteered to become a small steward of the library pavilion. After 3 whole years, he had already memorized all the ancient books in the library like the back of his hand. Other than the library, there was another place that Yuzha frequented. This was the market. There was nothing much to see in the outer and middle streets, but the mysterious and high-end inner streets often had some unexpected treasures, some treasures that many people couldn't understand, but had profound meanings. However, the inner street was not a place anyone could enter. Although Yuzha was an inner sect disciple of the Soaring Sky Pavilion, his background was not particularly strong. Secondly, his strength was not particularly strong, and he had never achieved any dazzling results in the competition between the 3 pavilions, so he had never been able to obtain the recognition of the inner street. The only chance he had to enter the inner street was during the monthly Inner Street Open Day. Opportunities always come to those who are prepared. Under Yuzha's unremitting efforts. Finally, a few days ago, during the Inner Street Open House, he finally found what he had been dreaming of. A fortuitous object that was overlooked by everyone, but was enough to allow someone to step onto the peak. That was the star ink stone recorded in the ancient books. Every time he thought of that pitch-black stone, Yuzha couldn't help but feel a wave of excitement. This was a treasure that even the Hong Merchant Company had misjudged. Although the price of 1,000 spirit jades could not be considered low, but if it was according to what was written in the ancient books, its true value was far more than 1,000 spirit jades. It could be 10 times or even 100 times more. It was a pity that Yuzha did not have 1,000 spirit jades on hand at the time, although he was an inner sect disciple of the Soaring Sky Pavilion, and his monthly salary was far higher than that of the disciples of the other 2 pavilions. It was not very realistic to rely on this little bit of salary to save up 1,000 spirit jades. Also, he had been a steward of the library pavilion for the past 3 years, and did not go out to do those high-reward missions. So he was not as rich as the other inner sect disciples of the Soaring Sky Pavilion. But luckily, Yuzha had already arranged with someone to borrow 1,000 spirit jades before the Inner Street Open House next month. Although the interest rate was extremely high, as long as he successfully bought the star inkstone, the return it would bring would be at least 10 times, or even 100 times more. As long as he waited for less than a month, he would be able to purchase the star inkstone, recorded in the ancient texts. One could imagine how excited Yuzha was right now. This was a precious treasure that could change his entire life. Yuzha wasn't worried that someone would buy the star inkstone before him, because the rarity of an item like the star inkstone was far above that of other treasures. This could be seen from the fact that even the treasure appraisers of the Hong Chamber of Commerce weren't able to determine its true value. It was only because of the appraiser's intuition that this item was not ordinary, so he symbolically priced it at 1,000 spirit jades. Apart from people like Yuzha who specialized in reading ancient books, no one else would know the use of the star inkstone, much less spend 1,000 spirit jades to buy this strange stone. Thus, Yuzha was determined to obtain it. Suddenly, an unfamiliar figure flashed through Yuzha's mind. It was that grassroots wandering cultivator he had never met, who had been standing next to him when he had found the star inkstone. Judging from the situation at the time, he had seemed rather interested in the star inkstone. Could it be that this fellow also knew the value of the star inkstone? As soon as this thought appeared, Yuzha began to laugh self-mockingly. Putting aside the fact that grassroots wandering cultivators had no chance of coming into contact with ancient books. The possibility of them recognizing the star inkstone was minuscule. Even if they recognized it, could it be that they could gather 1,000 spirit jades and buy it before Yuja did? But self-mockery was self-mockery. Yuja could not afford to lose this star inkstone. No matter how absurd this thought was, he still had to nip the risk in the bud. Better safe than sorry. He decided to wait the night before the inner street open house next month, and buy the star inkstone as soon as possible. This way, even if that grassroots wandering cultivator also took a fancy to the star inkstone, even if he also gathered 1,000 spirit jades, in the end, he could only look on and sigh. This is an opportunity and good fortune that belongs to me, Yuja. No one can steal it from my hands. With its assistance, I will walk the path to the peak. Chapter 36-43. In fact, he hadn't even thought about how to earn the rest of the spiritual jades. With the news of him being cheated by many newcomers using useless jade to exchange for good jade, the first to come to him was not the other restless newcomers from the other pavilions, but Senior Brother Bitter Guy. Although Lin Yi was a little surprised by Senior Brother Bitter Guy's visit, he was still quite happy. The reason was very simple. Senior Brother Bitter Guy had delivered the 300 to 400 pieces of useless jade that he had mentioned before. It was a full sack. Looking at the sack full of useless jade, Lin Yi was naturally overjoyed. With a rough estimate, there were at least 350 pieces of useless jade. In addition to the 80 pieces he already had, it meant that he had a total of more than 430 pieces of spiritual jades. Faced with such an outcome, it would be strange if Lin Yi wasn't overjoyed. Seeing Lin Yi's joy, Senior Brother Bitter Guy was naturally happy for him too. However, he hesitated for a moment and couldn't help but ask the question in his heart. Junior Brother Lin, there is a rumor that even the other 2 pavilions newcomers have heard. It says that you were exchanged for 15 pieces of good jade with useless jade. What is going on? Senior Brother Bitter Guy already knew that Lin Yi had been exchanged for good jade by Meng Jueguang. He thought that it was just because Lin Yi was careless and was tricked. He didn't expect such a thing to happen in just a few days. Moreover, the rumor sounded so real. This made him a little puzzled. Even if Lin Yi was really as stupid as the rumor said, the problem was, where did he get these 15 pieces of good jade? Others thought that these good jades were the 15 pieces that Meng Jueguang lost in the bet. But Senior Brother Bitter knew. However, Senior Brother Bitter Guy knew that these good jade were all in the hands of Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai. Lin Yi didn't want any of them. And if the piece of spiritual jade that Meng Jueguang cheated was counted, as a newcomer, Lin Yi shouldn't have a single good jade in his hands right now. But the rumor sounded plausible and didn't seem to be fake. If it was purely a rumor, this kind of thing might happen among the common people. But these were all heaven-rank experts. It was impossible for them to not have the basic ability to distinguish between the truth and the truth. This is actually a little secret of mine. Senior Martial Brother Ku, after you hear it, you'll understand. You have to keep it a secret for me. Lin Yi knew that Senior Brother Ku Bai would ask such a question, so he had already thought of an excuse. Of course, he would not mention the space of the jade pendant. Junior Brother Lin, don't worry. I will definitely keep it a secret. But if it's inconvenient, you don't have to tell me. Senior Brother Ku Bai said considerately. He was only concerned about Lin Yi's situation, but he didn't necessarily want to know Lin Yi's secrets. Lin Yi smiled and shook his head. Actually, it's nothing. Senior Brother Ku, you already know that I'm an alchemist. I recently found out that if I use these waste jades as supplementary materials, it can increase the success rate of alchemy. So I secretly refined some alchemy pills and sold them in the market square. That's how I got the good jades that they exchanged for. I see. Senior Brother Ku Bai finally understood. But then he asked, but Junior Brother Lin, since you used pills to exchange for these good jade, why didn't you keep them for yourself? Could it be that it's more profitable to use them as supplementary materials for alchemy? That's true. So I was happy to pretend to be the idiot that they said I was. I secretly made a fortune. Lenny laughed. This time, even the bitter senior brother was amused. I was wondering, with junior brother Lin's intelligence, how could you suffer such a huge loss? So that's how it is. To think that I was so worried before. Senior apprentice brother Kubai's words were not false. Before he came here, he was really worried about Lenny. Lenny felt somewhat touched. Suddenly his eyes lit up. He turned around to avoid the other party's line of sight. He took out 30 pieces of spirit jades, put them in a bag, and handed it to senior apprentice brother Kubai. Senior brother Kubai was stunned and waved his hand repeatedly. Junior brother Lin, what do you mean? Don't tell me you think that I'm the same as the others, and that I'm here to exchange waste jade for good jade? Seeing that senior brother Kubai was really a little angry, Lenny hurriedly explained, Senior brother Kubai, you're thinking too much. If we really followed the 3-to-1 exchange rate of others, my 30 pieces of good jade wouldn't be enough to exchange for so many useless jades. I'm just making you worry about me, senior brother Kubai. I feel bad, so I'm just trying to express my gratitude. But junior brother Lin needs these good jades more than I do. Although senior brother Kubai was a little moved, he still insisted on not accepting it. Speaking of which, he had been a senior brother in charge for a few years, but he had never seen so many good jades at once. 30 pieces of good jades were enough to sustain his cultivation for a long time. About the matter of the spirit jades, senior brother Kubai, you don't have to worry about me. Don't forget that I can still earn them back by refining medicinal pills. Especially since you've provided me with so many useless jades. It's enough for me to refine a lot of medicinal pills. So, you should just accept these spirit jades. Between us brothers, is there really a need to be so serious? That would disappoint junior brother too much. Lenny smiled and persuaded. Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai have already accepted them. Senior brother Kubai, if you don't accept them, are you not treating me as one of your own? Since Lenny had put it this way, the bitter senior martial brother could no longer refuse. He could only say with an ashamed expression, then, all right, I will shamelessly take advantage of junior martial brother Lin this time. I will remember this favor in my heart. If it was before, he might have insisted on not accepting it. But now that he had been entrusted by Lu Bianren, in order to be able to fight against Meng Jueguang in the future, he urgently needed to increase his strength. Naturally, the more spiritual jades the better. Senior brother Ku, you're being too serious. Isn't helping you the same as helping myself? Lenny waved his hand dismissively. In reality, if it wasn't for the fact that he needed to save up spiritual jades to buy star inkstones, he could have given more. But now that he had given 30 pieces, he was left with less than 500 pieces. If he gave more, it might not be enough when the time came. The bitter senior martial brother nodded gratefully and carefully put away the 30 pieces of spiritual jades. After thinking for a moment, he reminded Lin Yi, Junior martial brother Lin, an innocent man gets into trouble because of his wealth. I'm sure you've heard this saying before. Although others know that you can refine medicinal pills, and it doesn't matter if it gets out. If your success rate in refining medicinal pills is very high, it will eventually attract trouble. So in the future it's better to be more careful. Senior martial brother Ku, don't worry. I know what I'm doing, Lin Yi replied. Chapter 3644. Foundation Establishment Barrier Breaking Pill? Lin Yi was slightly stunned. It was the first time he had heard of this kind of pill. However, from the name, he knew that this pill would definitely help a master in the Foundation Establishment stage breakthrough. He immediately said, I've never seen this before, but if senior brother Ku has the recipe, I can try it. I have the recipe here. Senior brother Ku immediately took out a recipe and handed it to Lin Yi. Lin Yi took the recipe and looked at it carefully. He found that this Foundation Establishment Barrier Breaking Pill was also a 4th grade pill, like the Heavenly Golden Pill. Its effect was exactly as he had speculated. It had the same effect as the heavenly golden pill. However, although they were both useful for masters in the foundation establishment stage, there was still a difference between the two. The foundation establishment barrier breaking pill could be used to help masters in the foundation establishment stage break through the barrier between the early stage and the peak of the early stage of the foundation establishment stage, and the barrier between the peak of the early stage and the middle stage of the foundation establishment stage. However, there was a prerequisite for this pill to take effect. That was, the user must have touched the cultivation barrier. If this condition was not met, the pill would have no effect no matter how many times it was taken. Moreover, taking the foundation establishment barrier breaking pill was not 100% sure that the user could break through the barrier. It would be better if the user was in the early stage or the peak of the early stage of the foundation establishment stage. However, if the user was in the late stage or the peak of the late stage of the foundation establishment stage, it would depend on the quality of the pill. If the quality was not good, and the user's aptitude was not good, it would not be easy to break through. In comparison, the Heavenly Path Golden Pill, also known as the Foundation Building Pill, could also be used to break through barriers. Furthermore, it could be used when one had yet to reach a cultivation barrier. It could also be taken as an experience pill, which was far more valuable than the Foundation Establishment Barrier Breaking Pill. Let me give you a simple example. Although Lenny had been in the early stage of the foundation establishment stage for some time, it was not a long time, and he had not touched the barrier of the early stage of the foundation establishment stage. If he took the foundation establishment barrier breaking pill at this time, it could be said that it would have no effect. However, if he took the foundation establishment pill, one would be used to touch the barrier, and the other would be used to break through the barrier. Then he could directly advance to the peak of the early stage of the foundation establishment stage. Therefore, although they were both fourth-grade pills, there was still a difference in quality between the two types of pills. However, it seemed to be a bit extravagant. The raw materials of the foundation breaking pill were not as complicated as the foundation breaking pill. Lenny could use them together to achieve the best effect. It seemed that senior Marshall brother Ku Bai's foundation breaking pill had come at the right time, and since it was a fourth-grade medicinal pill, in that case, Han Jingjing's modified godly pesticide cauldron could be used to refine it. It was enough to guarantee the success rate of refining. Thinking of this, Lenny nodded and said, "Senior brother Ku, I have the confidence to try this foundation breaking pill, but I need some time to gather the ingredients." Although the herbs required for this pill formula are not as complicated as the foundation building pill. But no matter what, it was still a fourth-grade medicinal pill, and it would still take some time to gather all the medicinal ingredients. Senior Marshall brother Ku Bai's eyes lit up when he heard this, and he hurriedly said, "I have medicinal herbs here, and I have prepared 3 sets, but they are all stored in my cave. Junior brother Lin, if you can refine it, I'll go back and get it for you." As he spoke, Senior Marshall brother Ku Bai did not wait for Lin Yi to agree, and turned to leave the cave. He could not wait to go back and get the medicinal ingredients. Lin Yi suddenly did not know whether to laugh or cry. He had known Senior Marshall brother Ku Bai for so long, and he had always given him the impression that he was a gentle person who could not be beaten with a stick. He had never seen him so anxious. In fact, it was no wonder that Senior Marshall brother Ku Bai was so excited. He had already been an expert in the early stage of the foundation building realm many years ago, and now he had been stuck in the barrier between the early stage and the peak of the early stage of the foundation building realm for more than half a year. No matter how hard he cultivated, there had never been a sign of loosening. According to his original character, he would not be as anxious as he was now. He could continue to cultivate slowly and look for an opportunity to break through. But now, Lu Bianren was in a precarious situation. Once he was transferred from the Welcome Pavilion, even if it was for the sake of Lin Yi and the other junior Marshall brothers who were loyal to him, he had to stand up as a senior Marshall brother. And with the strength of the early stage of the foundation building realm, he obviously could not compete with Meng Jiaguang. And if he wanted to break through this barrier in a short period of time, the most direct and effective way was the foundation breaking pill. If he was an expert in the late stage of the foundation building realm, and wanted to break through to the peak of the late stage of the foundation building realm, one foundation breaking pill might not be effective. But for him, who was in the early stage of the foundation building realm, it was almost 100% successful. For any cultivator, the most enjoyable thing in the world was always a breakthrough in strength. Senior Marshal Brother Ku Bai was naturally no exception. After a short while, Senior Marshal Brother Ku Bai came back with a basket of medicinal herbs. His speed was so fast that it made Lenny dumbfounded. It turned out that this guy also had such a nimble time. Lenny even suspected that he also had the gale-chasing lightning boots and the butterfly microsteps. Junior Marshal Brother Lin, come and check these medicinal herbs. See if they are enough. If not, I will think of a way to get more. Senior Marshal Brother Ku Bai panted heavily. Lenny nodded and carefully checked the ingredients according to the recipe. Indeed, as Senior Brother Ku Qian had said, there were 3 sets of herbs here. That was to say, if he could successfully refine all of them, he could refine 3 foundation breaking pills. Even if the probability of accidental failure was taken into account, the most pessimistic estimate was that with so many materials, at least one would be guaranteed to succeed. These herbs are more than enough. Lenny then looked at Senior Brother Ku Bai and said with some doubt, Senior Brother Ku Bai, you probably didn't know that I was an alchemist before. Did you prepare so many medicinal ingredients to get someone else to help you refine? According to common sense, Senior Marshal Brother Bitter Corner was not an alchemist. If he urgently needed the foundation establishment barrier breaking pill, he would at most gather spirit jades to buy it in the market square. He would not spend so much effort to gather so many medicinal ingredients. After all, no matter how many medicinal ingredients he had, they would not become pills. He still needed someone to help him refine them. Yes, I originally planned to go to the alchemy hall to apply, but the price is too high. I can't gather it in a short time. Since Junior Marshal Brother Lin can refine it, it couldn't be better. Senior Marshal Brother Ku Bai was glad. Alchemy hall? Lenny was stunned. You're tuning in to the Li Mei Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.